10,
9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3, 2, 1.
It feels good to be liked. So whether we realize it or not, we usually feel most comfortable with people like us, who talk like us, work like us, who look like us. But a lot of people like each other in one place creates places that are a lot alike. And too much likeness holds us back. We're more innovative, profitable, and well, just right the more unalike we are. Women Techmakers is working toward true gender equality in tech. And we need everyone in tech to help us reach this goal. Like Sabrina Farmer, who is sponsoring, not just mentoring women in her field. Brenda Jen, who is supporting women coders through Girl Develop It. And Meko Karake, who is working with his team to understand microaggressions. And we need you. Not just to join us, but to bring someone with you. To be one of millions more women to join the tech industry. Let's get together. Because when everyone in the workplace sees others like them, we can see that we all have a place in tech.
Hello, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal. Welcome to the last day of this amazing journey of Women Techmakers International Women's Day India 2020. I, Varsha Jaiswal, WTM Ambassador and co-organizer of Jalandhar, would like to take a moment to thank you people for being such an amazing audience throughout this summit. I believe that you enjoyed and learned from the previous sessions on leadership, machine learning and cloud, and design and entrepreneurship. I hope that you'll enjoy today's sessions as well. The cornerstone of today's event is Android and web. To co-host this session today, I'm having Priyal with me. So over to you, Priyal.
Hi all, I'm Priyal Jain, WTM Ambassador from the Indore community, would like to kickstart the event by thanking you people for joining us today. It is an immense pleasure having you with us on the last day of this amazing IWD India Summit 2020. Our first session is about what is new in Android R. Introducing the first speaker of the day, Mayuri, who is a developer advocate at Google. Over to you, Mayuri. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha and Priyal. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you for joining us today. It is my honor to be with all of you today. I'm super excited to share about our latest Android release and how do you get your apps ready for it. So, who am I? I am Mayuri. I work as a developer advocate at Google. I have around 11 plus years of experience around mobility and enterprise. Let's see our agenda for today. There are numerous features and updates that we have in Android R. Today, we'll see some of them in detail that might impact your app. By no means is this an exhaustive list. The entire list of features and updates are available on developer.android.com, and we keep updating them very frequently. This is a great time to learn and try out the new features and APIs, since currently we are in Developer Preview 4 and soon to go beta with it. So let's get started. Talking about privacy. Android 10 has been our most privacy friendly release till date. We introduced numerous features to help protect our users' privacy. We received tons of excellent feedback from users and app developers since then. Hence, one of our main focus in Android 11 has been to build upon the success of Android 10. With the latest Android 10 release, we introduced granular location permission, and we've seen over half of users only select only while app is in use permission. Our data suggests that users understand the while in use option and are intentional about their choice, providing us a strong signal that users choosing to share less information and data with apps. We also introduced a background location reminders in our Android 10, and our data suggests we have higher user engagement with those notifications. Over 65% of users choose to move from allow app in background to uh, allow while app is in use, and hence we want to improve on that. So Android 10 changes paved us our way to evolve as a platform to to bring greater protection of users' data. We have different variety of features in Android 11 ranging across permission changes, foreground service types, scope storage, package visibility, data access auditing, which is a very interesting feature, lot of these features. So let's dive deep into some of these features. And let's talk about one-time permission change. When given a choice, users are choosing to share less private data with their apps. We also saw that there are many apps which request background location access when they do not need it. So we asked our users about what other types of data are important for them. Based on that feedback in Android 11, we are bringing users more granular control over their private data and significantly limiting access in background for all of these. So when users are given a choice, what data is private to them and what would they not like to share in background with apps, we got three answers: camera, location, and mic. Hence, we are significantly limiting access in background for all of these permissions. As seen, our users said that they would like to restrict background access and try it one time and then significantly improve when they start trusting the app. Beginning Android 11, users will able to grant a temporary one-time permission for location permission request. This is in order to better protect users' privacy and make life easier for them. Also, for microphone access, suppose there's a conferencing app that is rarely being used. Users can make voice only calls, but they do have an option to not permanently commit to the record audio permission, and hence this one time permission. Also, for camera access, if the same app also supports video call, then the app would request record video permission, and we give our users option there. So, as an app developer, you might be thinking, okay, so these permissions have been changed from Android 10 to 11. What do we do? How do we adapt our apps to these new permissions? So you don't really need to change a lot. This is more of a user experience for the user. And as developers, if you've already been following best practices, you don't really need to change anything. And that's a good news. So, for example, if the user taps a location button, what happens here is, if you follow the best practices, we check if the permission is granted. If this is the first run, it might not be granted. Next, we let the system decide if to show a rationale or show an in-context UI explanation, like you see in this screenshot. Normally, not always, first time the system will consider if that's needed or not. Okay, so let us assume that we request for permissions as we used to do earlier as well. And then a dialog comes with three options. In case if the user presses deny or does not want to share that permission with your app, you should handle it gracefully and give the user some kind of a snack bar or a message that why this, if this permission is not given, how would it affect the user's functionality. So we saw a lot of changes in one-time permission and how you can adapt your app for it. Let's move ahead to package visibility changes. On Android 10 and older, we gave users a list of all installed packages on the system. We have changed this API now in Android 11 in order to better protect a user's privacy and give them more granular control. Okay, so again, few changes, but let's first see what has not changed and what you'll have to keep in your app as it is. So if you try to get your own app's package info, you'll still get all the details as expected and nothing changes here. If you try to get a list of all installed packages in Android 11, what you'll get is your own app plus some system packages, for example, media provider or some core Android functionalities. So with this new API, what you do get is your own app details and some system level details. But if you try to query some other app, by default in Android 11, you will get a name not found exception, regardless if that app is installed on your system or not. Okay, so now how do we work around this? We might get this exception, and how do we deal with it? Let's go through a few scenarios how to handle them. If you need to explicitly interact with some app or another app, we have a new queries element tag in our manifest. There you can specify package name, exact package name, and you will be able to query that app. So if you specify a specific app in your manifest file in queries element, your get installed packages will return that result. Also, if you might have use cases where you want to invoke multiple apps. For example, you make a custom share sheet or you want to invoke a certain custom intent. So we have these changes for all of you, and this is a nice way to do it. We also support list of multiple packages entries in the manifest. Okay, let's see one more use case. We also give you an option to do it with intent filter signature. For example, you just want to query certain type of apps if they are installed on the system or not, and you want to take an action based on that. For example, you want to share your image, which is a very basic use case, and you want to see what all apps are installed on the system to share that. So using an action send intent as a signature and a filter, you are able to filter out some specific types of apps and you will get those results back in your get installed packages. So we have two ways wherein a direct package name and an intent filter. If you have a use case that is not satisfied by both the above conditions, then we have a new permission for you, which is called a query all packages permission. We do not recommend you to use this permission, but there might be cases where you are like a security app, then you can use this permission. Keep in mind that this permission is gated by Google Play policy, and it will be only allowed for certain genuine use cases. If the primary purpose of your app is to get list of all packages, then you might get it. Okay, let's move to scope storage. Okay, before in Android 10, we did introduce scope storage, but we received a lot of feedback from you, and hence we gave our developers an option to roll back. But with Android 11, we are coming up with more granular APIs for scope storage. Any app with storage permission has access only to shared folders and not all the folders. Android 10 scope changed this by adding a distinction between media files and documents. So, for example, a user might want to share his photos or media or audio or video, but he might not want to give access to his documents or PDF or more sensitive information. And hence, we have this segregation. We received lots of feedback from developers, and The manifest attribute that we gave was the request legacy external storage manifest attribute, which you could be using in Android 10 to kind of opt out of this setting. But with Android 11, we have improved our scope storage in a number of ways. We have made adjustments to storage permissions. For example, whenever you request for external storage, now by default you only get PDF files to it, and that permission has been changed from all storage to files and media. In Android 10, we required users' consent to edit or delete media that is not contributed by your app. To do this, you must use the Media Store APIs to trigger a dialog to request user consent. If the user accepts, you'll get a callback in your app and you can proceed to access the file. In Android 11, we have improved the user content and given you a bulk edit access where you can request for multiple apps, for multiple files, the edit permission at the same time. And let us see how do we do that. Okay. In this sample code, you see is the first line where you provide a list of content URIs where you can list out all your media URIs which you want to kind of edit. And that's a easier way to do it now. Okay. So there are some use cases. For example, if you use an SDK like FFmpeg, and that SDK wants to access your media, some media files directly by their root path. And we removed that permission in Android 10, but we listened to your feedback and acted upon it. And now with Android 11 onwards, app are able to directly access files with a file path. But keep in mind that the native file access support is built primarily on the Media Store API. Hence, there can be some performance penalties using it. If performance is your number one priority, you must use Media Store's APIs. Based on our test, it's expensive for first opens and first reads. Obviously, the more your app uses it, the bigger impact you'll see. We want to continue allow some apps to have broad access to files on external storage, provided they have a use case which truly requires it. For example, if your app is a file manager app and that's the primary use case of your app, you might want to see all the files stored on the system. So we have a new permission for you, which is a manage external storage permission, which will grant all file access in settings. But this permission is also guided by Google Play policy, and look for more updates coming soon on this one. And now let's talk about major changes in app compatibility. We saw Android 11 as a lot of changes around privacy changes, permission changes, package visibility changes, scope storage changes, keyboard changes, and lots of other new features and update. But you might want to know that how do we actually test it? When in our earlier releases, we got feedback that since you change all of these at one time, you're not able to isolate these changes and judge the impact of what is happening with what change. Hence, with Android 11, we have got a new way for you to kind of test out these changes. We now want to give developers fine-grained control on testing and fixing issues. Developers can individually enable changes when trying to adapt to the new Android version or trying to upgrade to the latest Android SDK. You can either use ADB commands or you can use the toggle UI. With this, you'll be able to isolate every behavior of each feature and test it out. How does it work on your app? And you can make your app ready for all these changes and put up all these things in your product roadmap. So as you can see in the screen, we have an ADB command which will give you a flag to set on and off these conditions. With this, I come to the end of my talk. We've seen a lot of new changes, and we would highly encourage you to try out all these changes, find out touch points in your app where you will find impact. Does it solve your use case or not? And give us feedback. We are currently in developer preview 4, and we will be having a beta launch for Android 11 soon. We keep updating our documentation at developer.android.com and our social channels and other official Android Mania channels, Android developer channels. So keep an eye on that as well. With this, I come to the end of my talk, and thank you all for being patiently listening to me. And if you have any questions or any feedback, do reach out to me at my Twitter handle, or you can always go to the official Android channels. I highly encourage you that this is a great time to try out all these new features, read about a variety of features. We just saw some features in detail today, but we have lots of new exciting updates for you. And do check out developer.android.com for further updates. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Women Techmakers team for coming up with this exciting new summit, and glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayuri, for speaking to us about Android R. It's our pleasure to have you join this session today with the community. It gives me an immense pleasure to talk about the next speaker. She is a girl who started practicing Android since her high school, working as a senior engineer at Bounce and Google developer expert for Flutter. Let's give a warm welcome to Pooja Bhaumik. Over to you, Pooja.
Hello, hello everyone. I'll be talking about widgets that stretch and fold. And basically, what I mean is that I want to be talking about responsive design in Flutter and how we can build widgets that can fit in web layouts and even phone layouts. So, first, I'll be talking about the how we can break down the thought process when we are building an application. When we are building an application, what are the things that we need to think about when if we want to make sure that they are suitable for a web platform and a phone platform. So first thing is that will your app be responsive in different phone sizes? So if you're developing for a 9-inch phone, you might try it on a 5-inch phone and it will look terribly ugly because you might have some fixed width or fixed height or certain fixed content like that, which is not very responsive. So first, make sure that your app is responsive in different phone sizes. Scrollable versus fixed content. So when we are building some application, there are some content that you definitely want it to be scrollable if it exceeds the height or width limit. And there are some content that needs to fit in either one page or in the width, or the entire height has to fit in somehow. So you need to decide which of your content, when you have a bigger or larger phone or a smaller devices or in your web layout, which of the content needs to stretch or which of the content needs to fold. So another thing that you need to take care of is that there needs to be different arrangement of content when there is a larger screen size. So if you have some content that cannot fit on a phone device, when you're on a web layout, you probably can fit that content on the larger screen size by dividing the screen size into two halves or something. So you need to decide which of the content can be fit into a different layout in web and which can stay as it is in your layout design. So we'll be taking an example of the website that you probably have seen is the WTM India IWD website. So I'll just show that here. So this is the website that you see, and it's currently pretty responsive. So you, in the comments, you can actually mention what are the things that you see are changing while I am changing the device size. So right now, this is the web layout. Now, if you are reducing it, please note how the content is changing. And please put it on the comment section. What are the things exactly is changing here? See, here are the track cards which are changing on the basis of the layout. And before we had a box with no indicator, blue indicator on the side, and now we have. So there's a different design for boxes here. If you see, there's a different arrangement for your YouTube section and the text. So these are the things that we'll be trying to achieve with a Flutter application. So I actually have created a CodeLab version of the entire Flutter version of the entire application and put it on CodeLab. So you can see like not the entire thing. I was too lazy, but yeah. If you can see, this is now responsive here. This is a Flutter application. Now let's see when we are actually going to write a Flutter app, we probably write for a phone device first. So something like this. It's an iPad, but whatever. This is the first thing that we actually have done for a phone device. This is a Flutter application. It works like this, which is perfect. Or is it? So let's see what we have in this application currently. So you have an iPad Air 2, which has a width of 768. So we have a list view, which is a info section, which is all the text that you have. Then the YouTube section and the tracks list section. So this is only the three sections that I have developed till now, since I was very, very lazy to do the entire application. But I think that will give you enough idea about how we can go responsive for this website. So now the next thing that we can talk about, the first info section is basically just a column of text, which is perfectly fine. We do not have much problem there. But the YouTube section is a container with a 480 to 640, 480 by 640 dimension, because that's the kind of dimension that a YouTube video kind of has. So you must have a dimension like that if you want to show the YouTube video in a full screen format. So we just have a YouTube section that shows up there, and it's just a gray box till now. There's no video gonna play right now. And then you have a track list section, which is simply a track card widget that is going to be repopulated 4 times in your list view. That's all currently. There's no issue yet, but okay, sorry. Another thing is that the drawer layered. So when you actually open the drawer on the side, you will have all the menu options. Now let's see what is the problems with the current code. So can we also have this on the comments and tell us what are the problems that we have currently? This is a non-responsive design. What do you think is a problem with this design on an iPad? So you have the drawer here, you have the text here, and you have a YouTube video and a list of tracks. Now, when I go to a different phone size, do you see the problem? Can you mention that in the comment box in YouTube. What are the problems that I am facing currently? So we have text, we have a YouTube video, and some tech and some track list, which is fine. We go even smaller, and there's definitely some problem there. And for even a bigger screen, there's just too much space that we could have reused for better content. Yes, text align is fine. What uh, Okay, that's the UI thing, but what about the layout? No red button in phone view, but what about the layouts that is wrong here? Like, do you see that the content could have been shifted here? The list view is taking up so much of sizes. Like it's taking so much of space here. You could have like maybe like had the track cards in a smaller space like we have in the actual design. And of course, the drawer is still like that. Font, yes. So yes, we have got some of the, like, people are recognizing what is problem. That's the first step, that we need to recognize what is the problem with your application in terms of responsiveness. So now that you are able to recognize that, let's go ahead and try to fix some of them. So the first problem that I felt was the YouTube video in iPhone XR phone, where the width is itself 414, and you're giving it a container of uh, 480 by 640, is, it's a little silly, because there will be no 480 dimension there. It is the width is itself is 414. There will be no 480. So this does not look like a 480 by 640 dimension. The YouTube video will be definitely, it looks a very longer widget. So there is some problem there that we should be fixing first. There is a widget called aspect ratio, which attempts to size the child to a specific aspect ratio. And as you know, that there is a specific aspect ratio for YouTube videos, such as 4 by 3. So if you always force your widget to always have 4 by 3 dimension in whatever kind of scenario, whatever kind of platform, it will always be 4 by 3. So you had the container height 480 by 640. Let's make it uh, aspect ratio 16 by 9 or 4 by 3, which is going to make it perfectly fine for any kind of video. So let me just do that here. So you have this. So you can just change this to an aspect ratio, remove the height and container, and you can just give it an aspect ratio. So now you can change to different screen sizes, and it will always be the same dimension. So if you have iPhone 8, iPhone XS, iPhone XR, it is always going to be the size of your YouTube video. So that makes sure that whatever screen sizes you're moving into, can we have the slides again? Yes, whatever slides we move into, whatever device sizes we move into will always be the same dimension. So that's perfect now. Now we have, what are the another usage of aspect ratio could be logo images. You want some your logo definitely should be 2 by 2 or something, or the images should be some 40 by 60 or blah blah blah. It definitely should have a fixed aspect ratio. So you can take care of that with this widget. Another thing that probably you might have noticed is the row of widgets. So you have the row of widgets here, and it's definitely not properly visible. So you have in iPhone 8, you cannot even see the third button. In iPhone XR, you see like just half of the third button, which definitely is not responsive for smaller screens. It was working perfectly fine for the iPad, but does not work at all for iPhone devices, which is what you're actually developing for first. So here was the the code, which we simply had a row of 3 buttons, and which is fine. But here, when the button itself has some text which can be longer than the width, how can we make sure that we fit all the buttons in the width? There are a few ways of going about it. One is your fitted box. So you can scale and position its child within itself according to fit. So if you have a, let me find, we have the row here. Now, if you just wrap this with fitted box, now it will all come to fit the width that your parent is providing, which is currently the entire width of the device with minus some padding. So the fitted box is going to fit the entire thing here properly. So now if you just change it to, it's perfectly fine in iPad. It was always fine in iPad. If you make it iPhone 5, it's still fitting the width here. But the problem is I'm unable to see anything here. Like, it's so tiny that definitely in terms of accessibility, it is very, very wrong, because the person has to really squint to see what is exactly happening and what is exactly written there. So maybe not the best approach for this widget. So what another widget that we have is called wrap, which can display the children in either horizontal or vertical runs. So if now you have the a row, you can replace the row with a wrap. So if you can just remove this fitted widget for now and make it wrap and give it axis dot horizontal. So currently, if you check it in iPhone XR, it will first try to fit in the horizontal row. And if it cannot fit in, then it will go to the next line. It will kind of wrap the widget into whatever space it's available with. So, and when you see it in iPhone 5, since there is no space available for any of the buttons, it's all coming in vertical runs. But if you have an even longer screen, which is like iPhone X plus Max or iPad Air 2, it will first try to fit into the horizontal row. So if you see here, you have axis.horizontal. Now, if you see, this can be made into axis.vertical, and it always try to fill in the vertical runs. So in a way, if I make it vertical, even for a longer, bigger, larger screen, it will always try to fit the vertical run. So that's perfectly accessible for our application, and users are able to see things, which is great. So we can keep this on for now, and let's move it to the next issue that we have found. Uh, Now that we have done the things for the fitting and the wrapping and all the widgets that fold, are we doing things responsive enough for web? Because even now I see a huge YouTube video thing, a huge track card list widget that is taking my entire space. Now imagine if this were web, it would stretch the entire width. Sorry about the sounds here. But yeah, so, and the space that we have here, that could have been moved to here. Now, let's see how we can make it responsive for web. So we have something called Layout Builder. So Layout Builder builds a child widgets based on the parent's widget constraints. So basically, this is what is going to help you build your layout according to web or your phone. So first, let's see how we can make a responsive app bar. So here we have an app bar here, and then let's see if we to make a layout builder, we first give it a kind of a if else statement where if constraints is more than 500 you do this, if constraints is less than this you do that. So what we can do is that when the constraints of or the maximum width is more than 500, we can remove the drawer layout and try to put the menu items uh, on the app bar itself. So home, agenda, speakers will be on the screen itself because we have so much space left. So simply we return the app bar if constraints of max width is more than 500. Center, we have center title as false. We automatically imply leading as false, meaning the drawer uh, icon will be gone currently. And the actions will be giving the menu buttons on the app bar. This is when it is more than 500 screen. Now, when it is less than 500, we might want to just have a simple app bar where there is a door icon and normal text. Then we have the responsive home page. Let's see how we can just. So we have layout builder where we want to return when the max width is more than 900, it will return a web layout. And when it's less than 900, it will return a phone layout. So what is the web layout currently? We have the list view, which has a row. As we can see from this, our list view is going to be a row of info section, YouTube video, and then the next part will be the track card section. So you have a row of info section and you expanded the YouTube section, and then you have a track list section as a part of your list view. But the problem comes here. When you are creating this is what you are getting when you're trying to run this. So here you have the body section taking the text section taking the entire width, which is by it's saying that I don't have any space to give to the YouTube section. So I will take the entire space as available, and I don't really care about the YouTube section. So, which is definitely pretty selfish here. So what we can do is to fix it is that we can try to use an expanded or flexible widget. Now, widgets that controls how a child of a row, column, or flexes. So what we can do is that flexible is basically here if you give it a flexible fit flex fit dot tight, which is another way of saying that I'm going to use expanded. So it's just when the fit is tight, it's basically an expanded widget. So you can replace it with an expanded widget, and your entire row will be divided between two sections. One is the info section and one is the YouTube section. So it's divided into 50-50% of your screen. So that way it is more responsive that whenever you are going to be increasing the size, it's going to be taking half of your info section and half of YouTube. Another way of doing this, if you do not want to use expanded, is limited box. It will limit its size only when it's unconstrained. So if you just simply run this without expanded and it will throw an error that it has unbounded it has unbounded constraints. It basically, the constraints are infinity, and it wants to know how much it can expand into. So if you use a limited box, you can just wrap your info section with limited box and give the max width as half of the media query width, and that's all. It will always take, if it's unconstrained, if the parent is has as infinite width, it will always try to give the child a half of the width, which is the same as expanded here as well. So let me just just a second. So now I'm going to be trying to play the responsive homepage again and see how it looks. So this is the exact homepage. Here you have your limited box into half, and info section divided into half, and the YouTube section here. Now, the another thing that we are going to be doing is that we will need to be having the constraints that layout builder is giving. So here, like, you have constraints here that what is the constraint of your parent. You need to be providing it to your child widgets so that they can decide some layout according to it. Similar way here, like we have the blue indicator. We want to be knowing what is the constraint here. Instead of putting it again under a layout builder and checking the constraints, we can just create an inherited widget like this. We have an inherited widget which takes a box constraints called device size, and we can pass it to your responsive homepage here. So here you return a base page and give it a constraints device size, and simply say constraints.maxwidth is more than 500, return web layout or phone layout. Now, whoever is the child of this responsive homepage can clearly get the constraints the way they want to use it. So here I have used it for my track grid card. So you have the track card, which is basically the same card I'm using for the list view, but I am giving it some kind of constraints here. If max width is more than 900, you give the box shadow. If the constraints is more than 700, you give some loose constraints, or you don't. And here, like for the blue indicator, if the max width is more than 700, you give the blue indicator. Otherwise, for smaller devices, you don't. And this all I'm getting from the inherited widget, base page dot device size dot max width, which is here. If you have plenty, you're going to have plenty of widgets as a child of your responsive homepage, and each of them might have a different behavior for each size differences. So you might want to use the inherited widget to pass it on the constraints to all of your child widgets. So here we have, now the question is the list section versus the grid section. So here, when we had a list of cards, which was fine, but now we are going to create a track grid section, which is for a web layout. When we try to give it a row, because if you see, the design is that it needs a row of track. Now, which when you are changing the width, it is reducing its width of the card. So how, when we are trying to create a row of, here we'll be creating a row of flexible flex 1 track card. So when we try to fit it within the width, it has using a fitted box, there is this huge accessibility problem that we cannot even see the widget, uh, absolutely the text, because it's completely fitting the width and reducing the size a lot. So what we can do is give it a flexible flex one, which will say that whatever happens, we are going to divide the width between four flex cards, which is these four track cards. And if you increase the width, it will increase the height of the width as well. So here I can show you here in the Flutter responsive itself. So here you are increasing the width of your card, and when you're reducing it, it will reduce it according, and at all times it will always have flex as one and dividing its width between four parts. And once the layout builder says that it's less than 500, we will change the layout itself. So that's a wrap with all the widgets that we have created just for making this responsive design in Flutter. This is available in my code pen and you can check it out. It will also be available in GitHub soon once I finish a little bit of the parts. But there are plenty of more widgets that you will need for making your layout responsive. Like there is boxes, constraint boxes, overflow boxes, and definitely a good idea of widgets like fitted box and wrap makes sure that your entire app is responsive for web, phone, and hopefully even devices smaller than phone if Flutter supports that as well. So you can try and experiment with these widgets. There is an entire list of widgets that's available on the Flutter website under the layout section, and you can try and play around with it. And hopefully you will have a much more beautiful and responsive application. So that's all. Thank you.
It was amazing to listen to you, Pooja. We could really see and feel the love you have for Flutter. I would also like to thank you people for being an interactive audience. To bring you some more fun, I would like to invite Ananya from Human Techmakers Trivandrum and Padma Priya from Human Techmakers Madurai to engage us with the icebreakers. Over to you, Ananya and Padma Priya.
Hello everyone, warm greetings to all of you. I am Ananya R, Women Techmaker Ambassador from Trivandrum, and here with me I have Padma Priya.
Hi everyone, I'm Padmapriya. I'm a WTM ambassador for Madurai and I'm working as a software test analyst in GeeksApp. Today is the fourth day and the final day of our IWD India celebration. I'm pretty sure that you all might have really enjoyed a lot on these 4 days.
Me and Padma Priya have come up with yet another interesting activity for you all with today's icebreaker session. Both of us will be communicating with you through the comment box, so get ready, be active. So, before starting, let's do some warm up. Can we just see few hands up to just simply know what you're feeling now? Feeling good, happy, excited, learning so much, etc. So, come on, quick, let's see the comments how you're feeling now. Yeah, I'm
Let's
getting
move.
so many comments.
Okay, that's great. Let's move on to the warm up activity. We hope you all like numbers, but don't worry, this is not our actual activity. The interesting one is yet to come. Before that, let's do this and be ready.
Yes, The game is very simple. We'll just show up two puzzles and we'll give you quite some time, maybe 30 seconds. And if you get the answers, do share it in your comment box.
Yeah. We will move to the first puzzle. The question is, if we move the dice to the point where there is a red arrow, what will be the number on the top?
Okay, let me see the answers coming up. It's a dice. You will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me see the answers. Any guesses? Yeah, I'm getting answers. Okay, Padmapriya, can we see the answer?
Yes, Ananya.
Yeah, there are so many answers coming up. Yes, the answer is 3. So many have commented 3. Ravi, Harika, Gopika, so many have commented 3. So many of you will be wondering how it is 3. So we'll know that the sum of the two digits in the opposite side of the dice is 7. So when it is 4 coming, the 3 on the top and the answer is 3. So let's move on to the next puzzle, Padmapriya.
Okay. The next puzzle question is, view the blocks on the left from the orange point and direction of the arrow. Which image on the right is the correct view?
Yeah, so we have A, B, C, and D. So comment your thoughts. Which one it will be? If it is wrong answer, no problem. Comment your thoughts. Is it A, B, or C, or D? From the right in the correct view. I can see answers coming up. Yes. Yes, D, D, D. Yeah, everybody have commented it correctly. So can we see the answers?
Yes.
Yes, answer is D. So you might be thinking how it is D. So we'll give you an explanation. So when we start at the orange spot and look at the blocks, there are 4 blocks at the base and there are 2 blocks on the right on the top floor. This eliminates the option C and we have 3 more options. So if we go up 1 more floor, we see only the second block on the right. So hence it is answer D. Okay, it's really good to see the answers come up and you are very enthusiastic and so active. Now, can we move on to the actual real activity? Yes, it's the connection game or decrypting game.
Yes. Let me read out the instructions to play the connection game. There will be 5 questions to you. We will tell you what you are going to find by seeing the images. Example, the answer which you are going to find is maybe an actor or leader or inventor, whatever. For the first 3 questions, there will be a common connection between 2 images. For the remaining 2 questions, you have to connect the pictures to form a word. Please use the chat box to share your answer.
So are you all okay? So first slide, Padmapriya.
Okay.
So this one is very simple. Here there is 2 images and there is some connection between them. And the one clue is it's a part of a website. We can give you another one clue also. You can join the 2 words of these pictures and get the answer. Can we see some answers coming up? It's very simple. Yeah, Sahil homepage. Yes, Avani homepage. Yeah, so many correct answers are coming. Yeah, we are very happy for that. Yes, Padmapriya, can we see the answer?
Yeah.
Yes, it's home page. So it's very simple. Now let's move on to the next question.
Yes. There is a common connection between these 2 images which leads to a part of computer.
So now it's the second question. This is also very simple like the first one. Yes, motherboard, correct. Yes, yes, yes. Everybody have commented it correctly. The first picture shows a mother with a baby and the second picture shows it's a board. So while joining, we'll get it as motherboard. It's very easy. It's a part of a computer.
Now the game is going to be a bit harder. So let's move on to our next connection. There is a common connection between these two images, which leads to a person.
And this is not like the first one. You can't get the answers by joining the two words. There is some connection between these two pictures and you have to get the answer which will leads to a person. Can we see some answers coming up? I think they need a clue. It's a bit harder. So Padmapriya, can we have the two clues?
Yes.
Yeah, God, Selisa have messaged as Sarojini Naidu. Okay, let's see others also. Yeah, Twitter. Okay. So the clue is a proponent of civil rights, women's emancipation, and the person is an Indian political activist. Can we have more answers? Yes, Mini, Sultan, Abhishek, they are all commenting it. Okay, so Padmapriya, can you tell the answer?
Yeah, I know it is a bit tough to find answer for these questions, but the answer is Sarojini Naidu. The first image represents Nightingale bird, and the second image represents the writer. Sarojini Naidu earned a name as a Nightingale of India by Mahatma Gandhiji, and also she is a writer. Now we will move to the next connection.
Yeah, everybody have did it awesome. So everybody is very active. So this is the next one. Here we have the next connection game. There is a bird and a rocket is shown there, and there is some connection between them. And this connection will also leads to a person. Okay, let's see the answer. Come on, people. Yeah, Uttam Kini is commenting. Great. Great going. Come on, people. Do you need a clue? Okay, Padmapriya, let's have a clue.
Okay. The first clue is the bird name is falcon, and the second clue is SpaceX.
Yes, so many people are messaging. Varsha, Vedant, Yukti. Yes, can we see the answer, Padmapriya?
Yes, Ananya.
Yes, the answer is Elon Musk. All are actively participating it. We are very happy to know that, and hope you might have seen today's Twitter, social media, current affairs that today they have launched this with the SpaceX and NASA. You all might have seen that, right? This post today morning they have sent NASA and SpaceX have sent two astronauts. Okay, we'll move on to the next question.
Okay. This is our next connection and the final connection. There is a person who was its inventor, and what he found was related to social media platform.
Okay, can we see the answer? It's very simple because all of us are doing tweets in Instagram and social media. Every time we are using this. It's a very simple one. Should I make it easy for you? Okay, let me make this easy for you. The person's name is Chris Messina. Can we have few more answers now? Twitter board. Person's name is Chris Messina. Chris Messina has founded something related with Twitter. We always use this while posting everything. Twitter. Can we have more answers? Okay, I think Padmapriya, can you please tell the answer? Please show the answer.
Yes, Ananya.
Yes, hashtag. I saw Varsha telling correct answer. It's the hashtag. We always use hashtags. So Chris Messina found the hashtag in 2007 while he was tweeting his first tweet, hashtag found in the Twitter. So we hope you had a great time in solving these puzzles. Padmapriya and me enjoyed putting this together for you. And we are very happy that so many answers came up, very actively participating and very enthusiastic participants too. Hope you have a great rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ananya, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ananya and Padmapriya, for this engaging session. It was full of fun and learning together, and I personally enjoyed it a lot. I'm thrilled to see the level of excitement you people possess. I'd also like to remind you about the feedback form, which you can fill at gwo.gle/IWD-feedback. Without further ado, I would like to pass this mic to the author, an expert, a developer, and a super dynamic woman, Nishu Goyal. She is the GDE for Angular working in IBM and has published her book on step by step Angular routing. Welcome, Nishu. Over to you.
So, hey everyone, really excited to be presenting to all of you today with so many of us present here on a Sunday afternoon with the vision of learning something new and being the best version of ourselves. So, many thanks for joining today, and many thanks to Women Tech Makers for organizing this at such a scale and doing it so smoothly, this being day 4 of the event series. So the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is framework agnostic web components in general and in Angular. So the session today looks mostly like this. I'm going to start off with the introduction of what are web components, what we're going to be talking about. We'll then look at what are the web component specifications. There are some specifications that we need to follow when we are talking about web components. So we'll look at that. Then we look at the Angular way of doing web components. So how Angular does web components and how we can consume web components in Angular. We'll look at that. And if time allows, we'll look at some code as well. So I hope you enjoy this session today. Now, if you're into web, you would have a hint that JavaScript is almost ruling the world of web development right now. And with so many frameworks being out there, React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, with so many frameworks out there, we do come into a situation, we do come across a situation where we have to figure out which framework to go for, which has a higher or lower steeper learning curve, and which framework is required more by the industry in the industry. So all of that things we do face such situations, right? And that's when we come across something called framework fatigue. Now, this is actually a term. Framework fatigue, this term was coined and it's mentioned in the book Web Components in Action. And it basically means that, with so many frameworks out there, with ones which are already existing and with ones, which are going to come, we do have to accept that, right? And we can come into situations where we'll have to figure out which one framework particularly to go for. Now, this is something that we can't change, but what we can change is the way we look at the web right now. So imagine there's a situation where you can actually build something and use it in different framework projects without having actually the knowledge of that other framework. But then you should just be able to pick it up as a JavaScript code, put it somewhere in maybe a React framework project, and just be able to use it. That would be awesome, won't it? And that's when web components come into picture. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. That's kind of the purpose why web components are required and are used quite a lot right now. So the web, if you look at the web right now, it's almost componentized. And what I mean by that is, so for example, you have a view on a website, and that view can either be one component per view, or there can be multiple components on a view, but it's all components. And you would love it if you can just pick that particular component and use it wherever you want to. And to put it better, I've used this particular example. So let's say you have one framework project and you really like this red background component with the cup of tea in it, and you want to use this particular thing that you coded in one framework. Let's say Angular. You really like this thing, and you want to use the same thing. Maybe there's a requirement of the same component in the other project. Let's imagine, for example, it's a calendar component that you build, and it's not using any library that you can simply reuse, right? So you would simply want to pick it from here, use it in the React code. Now you're new into React, and you don't understand how to build such a advanced component that you did using Angular. You would want to just reuse it, pick it from here, place it in your React code, and it should just work. That's when web components really help you do that. And I would like to put it like this. This is kind of a layman way of putting the need of web components. And it says that I want to take something that I'm interested in and create a reusable piece out of that, so that I should be then able to share it with whoever wants to use it. It can be my team, myself in the different projects, or just publish it to an NPM registry. And a little official way of putting it is, this is the official document, official definition of web components. And since this tries to explain quite a lot, we'll break this definition down and then try to understand what it says. So web components are a set of web platform APIs that allow you to create new, custom, reusable, encapsulated HTML tags. So let's try to understand this first part of the definition first. So it says that web components allow you to build new custom, which means that it's your functionality, that you would want to have in your web component. It's not a regular calendar component or a regular color picker component. You have your own functionality that you have used in that particular component, and you want that to be reusable. That's the next part of the definition. The next word that's used in the definition. So you want to create a reusable web component. Now, the third thing that it says, which is the encapsulated HTML tags, is very important. So let's understand it bit by bit. It says encapsulated. What does that mean? Now, let's say you're using one web component and you're using it, you're consuming it inside an Angular application. The styles in which can conflict with whatever styles you have given to your web component also. Now, for example, you're trying to fetch the style by using an ID or anything, or for example, just a node. Let's say document.getElement by ID, whatever ID that you've given to your particular node. Now that can extract the node from your web component as well as your Angular consuming application. And you would not want that, because your web component is an isolated thing, and you would not want those to be conflicted. That's where encapsulation comes into picture. You don't want your styles and your nodes, HTML nodes, to be leaking outside or inside of your web component. That's really important. And then it says HTML tags. What does that even mean? Is it just not a selector? Now, this means that as the browser understands your div tag or h1 tag or any other tag like that, it should also be able to understand your tag, that the selector that you give to your web component, your custom element. So let's say you've given your selector name as WTM India. If that's your selector name, do you think the browser would understand that if you just place it there? No, right? So we need to do some configuration. We need to create our web component in a way that browser has been registered with that particular custom element, and it treats the WTM India selector just like it treats your div tag or an h1 tag. That's what web components will give you the power of. So there are some specifications we saw in the definition, that there are some specifications web components follow, and these are those specifications. And we'll go through each one of these one by one to understand what web components are all about. Now, the first specification is HTML template. We have shadow DOM, we have custom elements, we have ES modules, and then we have HTML imports. But as you see, I've just striked off HTML imports. So let's just talk about that for a moment. Now, HTML imports was a web component specification, and it basically meant that you'll be able to import your HTML documents within other documents. That's what HTML imports allowed us to do, right? Now, there were various problems with using imports, with like multiple imports in your application and frame sets and iframes, which is why many browsers did not accept it, and we could not include it as a web component specification. So now we have these 4 specifications for web components, and let's look at each of these one by one. So talking about HTML template, first of all, so whenever you're creating a web component, you can just wrap it inside, the two div elements, and it should work, right? You might be wondering why to even include it inside a template tag, but it has some advantages when you're building your web component. So if you include all of your web component code, the obviously the view part of it, the HTML part of it, inside the template tag, it would render only when the component is activated. Otherwise, it won't take the space in your DOM at all. The DOM won't activate the particular web component at all till the time you're actually using it. The second part is there is no images or videos that will hamper your load time, because they're not even rendering till the time you're needing those, right? So that way, template really helps you. The other thing, the other web component specification is Shadow DOM. Now, remember we were talking about encapsulation. That's where Shadow DOM comes into the picture. Now, it's not a mandate that you have to use Shadow DOM, but it always keeps it keeps your web component very isolated and in itself, and gives you more, power to do and play around things related to web components. So you would have an encapsulated DOM. This goes back to when I was talking about document.get element ID, and you're trying to get a node, and it would not leak outside, like your particular div with a particular ID will not go outside if your web component is encapsulated. It will just be isolated, and your consuming application won't have access to it until you want it to have the access to it. The other thing is scoped CSS. So your styles will not be, leaking outside, and there's no overriding of styles that will happen if you use Shadow DOM for your web component. Now, you might be wondering that you can always give this. You can always use important for marking your styles as important so that they don't get overridden. But do you really think you would want to do that for all of your styles in your web component to make sure it's not overridden? No, right? It's not very friendly. So that's about scoped, Shadow DOM. Then you have custom elements, which is the most important specification in your web component specifications. And now there might be a time when you'll get confused about what is the difference between web components and custom elements. But I'll try to I'll make sure that you understand the difference precisely, because when I got into web components, this is what I was really getting confused about. And I would ask everybody that why don't we use just one term? It's just web components, custom elements, just the same thing. So I'll try to clear that. Yeah, so custom elements is such an important specification in web components. It's almost the linchpin of the specifications. This is what holds the web components all together. That's really important. And what it means is that whatever selector you're giving to your component is what it takes to register it to your browser, for your browser to understand that, okay, this particular selector, this particular custom element is what contains all the configuration for your web component. So now, as I've written here, my reusable element, this is an element that I've created, and I want to register it to the DOM so that the browser just understands it like another div element or an H1 element. So this is where custom elements and web components differentiate. Custom element is an important part of web components. Here, it would mean that this is a selector that that goes to the browser and registers whatever functionality your web component contains. But then web components do have other specifications, as we just saw: HTML template, Shadow DOM, ES modules, custom elements. So custom elements and web components have that difference. Now, there's this very interesting website that you will be interested in, and it as it says, it makes sure that frameworks and custom elements can work together really well, and it gives you the percentage of which framework is compatible with creating custom elements, creating web components. Now, I hope you understand the usage of terms custom elements and web components here. And to give a better perspective of why we'll be doing this with Angular, I have added this particular screenshot. This is from this particular website, Custom Elements Everywhere, and this tells us that how Angular is compatible with creating custom elements. It's about creating custom elements and web components with regards to the compatibility in terms of whatever data binding or component communication that we use. So that is pretty much similar. We'll look at that. And the score that it gives Angular is 100% and all the test cases pass. This is because of obviously some similarities that we have in the way we create web components regularly just using vanilla JavaScript, or the way we do that using Angular. So next thing is that let's look at how do we create web components. Now this is a non-Angular way of doing it, the way we are looking at it right now. So if you want to define a custom element, you would just have a class, a regular JavaScript class, which would extend HTML element. Now, this is really important because you want to define a custom element and your browser should understand that. But your browser understands only the things that are HTML elements, right? So in that case, what you really need to do is extend HTML elements so that browser thinks that, okay, this particular custom element that's coming in is something of sort of HTML elements, and it would then consider it. However, if you don't register it to the DOM, what would happen? It would think that, okay, it's not an HTML element, and it would just ignore it. There would be no error in the browser, but it will just ignore it. And if you see in the next line, it says custom elements.define, then it gives some selector value and then gives the name of your whatever class you're using, whatever component name that you're defining. Custom elements is the API, and it has the method define to give the browser particular selector that will be registering in the browser. So this particular ng search bar that you see here, ng-search-bar, is the selector that the browser should understand. And the search bar component is what it will lead to. So your selector ng search bar means this particular component and whatever functionality you've given inside this component. So custom elements API is the main thing that allows you to create custom elements, define custom elements. And this is similar to what we'll be using in Angular, and try to relate the things the way we are doing in vanilla JavaScript to what we'll do in Angular. And you'll understand why the score is 100% and how much is the compatibility. Now, custom elements have something called reactions. And this is exactly like we have lifecycle hooks in Angular. So I've just written lifecycle hooks there for you to be able to relate to how we do it in React, for example. We would have component did mount, component did unmount. In Angular, we would have ng on init, ng on destroy, right? Similarly, exactly just the way frameworks work, we have custom element reactions. And here it would mean whenever your browser has a DOM node, the DOM has a node attaching to it, it would call the lifecycle hook, or let's say reaction, because custom elements call it reactions. It would invoke the connected callback function. Similarly, if it wants to remove the node from the DOM, similarly it will call disconnected callback. And just like the way we have ng on changes to detect any changes in the attributes, we would have attribute changed callback here. Now, the way the life cycle of the component is working in frameworks, it's very similar to the way custom elements work. The only thing required is just to extend HTML elements so the browser understands that, okay, this is also going to be an HTML element. Now, the next thing, if you try to relate in your custom elements and your frameworks, you would see that the way we have reactions in custom elements, we have lifecycle hooks in frameworks, or let's say Angular. Then we have properties in our custom elements. So for example, if I go back to this slide, not this one, but this one. So we have this selector, right? ng search bar. And let's say if you want to pass some property from the consuming application to this particular custom element, because it always depends on the context, right? For example, in your React code, you want to have the calendar settings, calendar configuration as something else. And in your Angular application, you want the calendar configuration as something else. Now, if you build your web component separately and you just pass it on to different frameworks, it would have one configuration which you might not be able to change as per the context. That's when this particular selector would want to have something coming from the consuming application telling the web component that, okay, this is something that you have to use for this particular context. Would be very easy for you to communicate, right? This is the communication that we were talking about, that web components allow us to communicate between different frameworks. So that's about properties. And if you want to relate it to the way we do it in frameworks, we have input property, which passes properties from the parent component to the child component, the nested components. And the way we do property binding using square brackets, we'll look at that. Then we have custom events. and that's about passing events, from the web component to the outside application or the consuming application. And we do that using output and event binding in Angular. So for example, there's a click in the child component. In this case, it's a web component, and you want to capture this click and you want to do something in the consuming application. That's when you would, want to use custom events, because you want to have your web component communicating with your consuming application. This is again very important. Now, if you've created custom attribute directives in Angular to play around with the behavior or the appearance or the layout of your particular DOM element, in that case you would have used host binding. Now, host binding is something that allows you to play around with the properties of capture the property of your attribute of your DOM element and then use it in the directives. This is exactly what attributes help us in custom elements. So if it's getting a bit of confusing to you right now, you'll understand it when we do the practical example of it. Now, if I go back again and try to relate all the things that are so compatible, reactions which are exactly like lifecycle hooks, properties which are like property binding, custom events which is just like event binding, attributes, it's almost very similar. And then we think of combining these two. Why not do it together? Just use Angular to create a custom element, not creating it in a vanilla JavaScript project. And that's when Angular elements come into picture. So Angular elements is a package inside. I mean, you have to add it separately. It doesn't come with Angular core package. And mainly when you're trying to create web components with Angular, that's when you would install it. You would add this package, Angular elements. And what this basically helps you do is, okay, let's look at the installation first. So you can do npm install Angular elements. Now, this is kind of a disclaimer that whenever you're working with the web components, the most important thing for you is to deal with polyfills. And if you're not aware what polyfills are, so imagine that, I mean, just take the example of different browsers. There are some browsers which support a particular functionality, but then there are other browsers that do not support some functionalities. And to make sure that all the browsers have this compatibility to be, hosting your web component, you have to make polyfills your best friend. And we'll look at that more. So if you do npm install Angular elements, it would not get you any polyfill. However, if you want to get the polyfill that comes with the Angular elements package, you can just do ng add Angular elements. Now, this polyfill is very light in size, but then the polyfill doesn't make sure that it would work in all the different browsers. So we have many other polyfills which come with web components package, and we'll look at those and then include those in our application so that it works. The other thing that you need to install is the web components package, web components custom elements package. So this is really important because you're dealing with web components, you're dealing with custom elements. You need to let the browser know that it's a custom element, it's a web component, and you need to register it to the DOM, right? This is why web components is really important. And this is why I put this animation here, because polyfills should be your best friend. Otherwise, you end up with errors that you'll never understand why it's happening, and polyfills will be the thing. The browser will not even throw an error that that will help you understand that, okay, is it the polyfills? So make sure you remember polyfills from the very start whenever you're dealing with web components. The next thing is the polyfills again. So you need to import these polyfills manually, because the polyfill that comes with Angular might not give you the support for all the browsers. So you go ahead and install 2 polyfills, which will make sure that your web component is accessible to all the different browsers. And there's these 2 polyfills. One is the native shim, the other is custom elements. These 2 will help you, will do the job for you. Now, let's get into a practical mode a bit. And you're trying to create a component. Let's call it reuse element for now. And since you want to keep it an isolated thing, you're just inlining the template and you're inlining the style. And since you would want to use a selector, you're just giving it a prefix which is called web. So it will be web reuse element. The name of your selector will be web reuse element. So this is something that the component that you just created looks like. It's called web reuse element, the selector name, the template is in line, the styles are in line. This is what we wanted, right? So this is a whole new component within itself that you want to use for as your custom element. this is what we'll be passing to all the different other frameworks for use. Now, remember we were talking about Shadow DOM. So make sure you set encapsulation as Shadow DOM to make sure that your styles do not leak out, your DOM nodes do not leak out. And the component template in this example, what I'm trying to do is this is the inline template that I've written here, and I've simply created an input field, and it takes the placeholder as an input from the consuming application. As you see, I've interpolated it here, the Angular way of interpolating, any properties. So we've just interpolated here. It will receive the value from whatever consuming application is, be it React, be it Angular, or any other framework. And this simply displays you a search field. This is what we have created in our component. The input binding says that, okay, this text field should be coming from the consuming application. Okay, good to go. The text field is coming from the consuming application, and we have already created an input kind of a component. The next thing is that we need to register our web component in the module. Now, we know that in Angular, we need to register all the components in the module for the compiler to understand that there's a component that exists, right? This was the case before at least Angular 9. With Angular 9 coming up, we have many more things with the decorator, with ID. So you don't really need entry components array. We'll come to that. So yeah, in the ng module, decorator, you just give the declaration and you just define the name of whatever component. In our case, it's called search bar component, and you would you'll just inject you'll have dependency injection in case you have to get any other dependency injection. Now this is very important. Just like we bootstrap a component whenever we are dealing with whenever we want to launch a particular component at the start of our application, there are times when we don't want to do it, when we don't want Angular to do it, but we want to do it manually. That's when ng-do bootstrap method allows you to do that. So you're not using the bootstrap array now, but you have this method wherein you're creating this custom element, which is the search bar component that you just created. So create custom element comes as a part of Angular elements package. And here you simply use this search bar component and do the dependency injection if required. And finally, use the same thing that we were doing in the custom elements. You're using the custom elements API, the define method, giving it the selector name, and search bar, which is the name that you've used here for creating your custom element. And you can also do that, just in the main.ts file, which is the entry file to your Angular application. This would be exactly like the way you did it in ng-do bootstrap. The only difference is you're not going to the app module now. You're doing it in the main.ts file, which is the entry file to your application, to your Angular application. And whenever we are dealing with web components or dynamic components in Angular, we have to make sure, we used to have to make sure that we add it to the entry components array. But like I said, starting Angular 9, we don't need to add our component to entry components array, because with Ivy, the component doesn't need to be, we don't need to specifically mention it as an entry component, because all the components are kind of considered as entry components. And there's a lot of details into that, but we'll not go into those for now. So this is what my component looks like currently. It's called, the selector is called ng search bar, and it has a property called text field, which is received from the consuming application. And this is what we have built. This is the Angular code that I've written for creating the input element, input field, and the enter some text here. The placeholder that you see currently is what it receives from the consuming application. Now, if you want to consume any web component in an Angular application, there's just one thing that we need to tell Angular to accept web components, and that's the schemas array. So you need to tell Angular that, okay, there's some custom elements which you might expect, and it's not a regular Angular component. So custom element schema is the thing for that, and any other component would just work. But the main thing is, how about outside Angular, because we are talking about communication of frameworks, right? So then comes the build process. And when it comes to the build process, we get to know that, okay, Angular doesn't officially support building your web component and exporting it outside for now. But with Ivy, obviously, there's a lot of things going on. But there's a community project that actually allows you to do that. The project is NGX Build Plus by Manfred, and this basically helps you add all the polyfills which earlier you were adding manually. You don't need to do that, and you can simply add it to your project using ng add ngx build plus. This will get you all the polyfills, and you can simply add it using ngx build plus wc polyfill. This will generate the required polyfills for you, and there's no manual way of doing it now. And what it would do is that it will build your application, build your particular component with a single bundle flag, because you want a single bundle. You don't want multiple files to be exporting, because no framework would accept so many files coming in, so many script files coming in for just including one particular component that the framework is interested in. And you would make sure you keep the polyfills, because polyfills is your best friend, right? So you would want to build the component, and you want to publish it to the npm repository. If you think my component is the best and people can leverage it for their projects, then you can pack it and then publish the package to npm registry with the access public, obviously, if you want. And so the software component that we created, I posted to the npm repository. You can try it out. And what this basically will allow us now to do is to use in different frameworks. So we'll try to use this component that we just created, a very simple component in React. So we are trying to use consume this component, this input field, in a React framework now. And there are two main things that we need to do: install web components and use it in a React template with the selector that we have, right? So first thing, include the script, and you can use unpackage or any other packagers that allow you to get the component from npm. I'm using an unpackage here. This gets me the package, and I'm referring to the single bundle which was for the main.js file, right? This is just the main.js file which includes the polyfills that I was needing, which includes all the other functionality of my web component. Now, inside my React code, it's a very very simple create React app that I'm using. And I'll just place this particular component that you see in the second line here, which says ng search bar, which is the selector of the component that I'm using. Then you have this text field, which will be the placeholder of my input field. I don't want it to be enter some text here, which was there in the Angular application. I want it to be the React way of whatever you want to put in the React framework project. And this says that let's enter something from this create React app now. So moving on, would it work? Do you think there's anything left? It should work, right? But doesn't seem to be working. What's next? Polyfills. So in the consuming application also, even if you kept the polyfills in your web component, you need to add polyfills to the consuming application. Otherwise, the application won't support your web component. So do you understand how famous polyfills is in the world of web components? So we need to include it at every step in the process. In your web component, when you're exporting your web component, when you're consuming your web component. So add polyfills to your React code, and then would it work? Let's check. It does. So it's a basic create React app. It's that same input field that we created using the Angular framework, but the placeholder is different. And the placeholder is exactly what we specified in the React code when we were placing the selector. So it says, well, let us enter something from this create React app now. Great, that works in React. This is how we could communicate between frameworks using web components. And it was just pure JavaScript code after we exported it and made it available to any other framework. So you see how you're able to carry your favorite Angular functionality to other frameworks. And this is not just the case of frameworks, but a vanilla JavaScript project as well. Because the web component that you exported, right, it's just JavaScript. So your regular JavaScript project also should be able to access it. So, if you want to try it out with a regular JavaScript project, you can do that as well. And I'll share the links to, my this npm repository where I created the search bar component, so that you can simply go ahead and try out in the different frameworks. Now, this is the Staglets example that I'll be referring to in the end of my presentation, and we'll look at some code the way I'm doing it in Angular, but after my slides. So this is the link that I'll be sharing with you in the live chat also, so you can, in the meantime, figure it out, what's happening, what's wrong, all that. And before we go to the code example, I know that just 30 minutes is not okay to understand. It's not enough to understand what web components are, because there's a lot of deep diving that you need to do to understand web components better, especially when you're actually doing it. So what I did was I actually created a code lab for you to follow step by step and understand what really happens, that when you're dealing with web components, when you're dealing with custom elements, when you're dealing with the specifications, like no leaking of your styles or nodes. So this is the link that I'll be sharing with you of the code lab, and you can refer to this. I've also put the link of the repository here. This is the repository wherein I'm creating the web component, the Angular code of creating the web component. And we'll finally go to the code and look at that. But before, okay, let's just go to the code now and try to understand. So it's a very basic, example of a text here, and we have this app module. So, like I said in the beginning, I hope this is clear to you. The text which is written here, I'll just make it separate. Yeah. So this is my app module here, and we are using this injection, and using an instance of the injector service, so that we make sure that dependency injection works for our web component. Now, we don't want to bootstrap manually the app component in this line, just like we do in any other regular Angular application. We don't want to bootstrap that, because we don't even want the app component to start up at the startup of our application. We just want that this Angular application should create a web component for me, and that should launch when I want it to launch. So if you're not using the bootstrap array, the other way of manually doing it is to use the ng bootstrap ng do bootstrap method. And in here, just like we saw in the slides, we are using the create custom element. Where does that come from? Create custom element comes from the Angular elements package. So since we added Angular elements, we have the create custom element method available. We have created a hello component. So let's just look, do we even have a hello component? We do have a hello component, right? So this hello component says that, okay, there's just one heading which has a hello keyword in here, and the name which it's supposed to be receiving from the consuming application, right? Now the input, like it says, the name has to be coming from an outside consuming application. So if we go back here to our app module, let me just close this. We are doing the injection here, which is not required for the moment. And finally, we are registering it to the browser. So if you focus on this line now, my component selector is called my com, right? My hyphen com. And what is the element that it should refer to? This this particular thing is the element wherein, which captures the element that you just created, the instance of your hello component. So this is really required to be registered to the DOM. Otherwise, the browser would not understand it, just like another div tags or h1 tags. Now, if I place this my comp tag in any other Angular component, it would just behave like an Angular component, right? That's not something that we want. So let's go to the index.html, which doesn't have any Angular functionality going on there. We don't have app root here. Do you see? Just like we have my app or app root in our regular Angular applications, we're not starting that. We're not doing that. We just want that in the index.html, it should not even start up my Angular application, but just refer to the to the web component that I created, which is the my comp selector. So we are doing that here, and the name is, this is the property binding that we are doing in case of web component. Now, if you look at the Angular way of doing it, you would have something like this, right? Where this is property binding, and then you would give it some property that you want. This is the Angular way of property binding. However, this is not something you want. The custom elements way of binding the properties, defining the property for your web component, is a simple property name and then whatever name you want to specify. So do you see how this consuming application, which is in this case just your index.html, which is you can think of it as a regular JavaScript code, or just an HTML file which is consuming the code from your consuming application. So you're specifying the property here. This is how you're doing the property binding for your web component. And if you want to see how we need to include the script, there's nothing in your app component, very regular stuff. There's nothing done here. Here also we don't even render the app component, so there's no hi on the screen that we see. And what else you would like to see? The thing that we did in the app module in the ng do bootstrap, you could actually do that here also in the bootstrap module. So this is like the entry file of your Angular application. This is what makes sure that from the first you go to the app module takes you to the different components that you're defining. So this is kind of the path that you need to follow. And the polyfills, you don't need to specify anything, because you, while creating, you were actually keeping the polyfills. And in the consuming application, this is, since this is just index.html, you don't need anything here. So I hope the this particular templates link is shared with you, and you will try it out. And I'll also share the code lab link with you in a bit. And you can refer to that code lab and play around, and it lists down all the dependencies that you would need. All the, it's like a cookbook which will allow you to code along and then build your own web component, but make sure you add polyfills. So I think that's pretty much it. And I'll just refer to the few resources that I followed, which would be very beneficial for you as well to dive deeper into, so that you can use those and create your web component. So first is the book, that Web Components in Action, that I was talking about in the beginning of my talk. And this is really helpful for you to understand the idea behind web components, when it was nothing about frameworks, but just about why web components are required, and how do they help you in web development. Then there are a few links about how Angular does it. The second link that you see here is the Angular Elements part. So the way Angular Elements package allow you to use web components in your consuming applications. And then we have web component specifications. Now, this is a really good link about learning all the fundamentals of web components. If it's about Shadow DOM, if you want to dive deeper into what Shadow DOM is, if you want to dive deeper into what happened to HTML imports or all that. So this is really a great link for that. And then there's this YouTube video. So when you get these slides, you will get reference to all these links as well, and you'll be able to access this particular YouTube video. And I think that's pretty much it. I'd like to thank you all really for being here and enjoying all these sessions. This being day 4, you're really I can see the enthusiasm. And just one last thing that I would like to mention is that there's a lot of scope for learning and contributing. And to all of you attending today, I would ask that if you're really interested, please reach out to me, and we can do dedicated sessions. We can do pair programming. I can learn with you, you can learn with me, and we can all do this together. And this community that we are building slowly is just great. So it would be fun. And I mean, I also started 2 years ago after college, and it's just great that we can contribute and learn together. So please reach out to me, and we can do something together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nishu, for making time to share your knowledge on Angular with us. It was interactive and enriching. Next up, we have a series of interesting lightning talks from some of our Women Techmakers ambassadors for talking to us about what it takes to become a modern web developer in 2020. We have Nimetha Varan. Nimetha is a developer at 4Kites and a tech geek. Over to you, Nimetha.
Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. So, hello everyone, hope you're all being safe. So, let's get started with the session. The topic which I've chosen today is what it takes to become a modern web developer in 2020. Why did I choose that? Because when I started my professional journey like 2 years back, I was completely new to the front end journey. So during all of my college days, I was into mobile app development. So when I started the front end, I thought it's just a basic color change or a font and stuffs and a couple of tags. And after working with the front end task for like last 2 3 years, 2 to 3 years, I came to know across a lot of technologies and frameworks, and there are new technologies which is coming like every single day. So in this talk, I wanted to share all of the learnings which I had in past 2 years and give a set of steps to where to start off with and end to become a full stack web developer. So this session is totally for beginners. Let's get started. So what's the agenda for this session? So I'll start off with what is web development basically, and why to start off with web development right now, and what are the good to knows before starting off with web development. And then we will see the set of steps that you need to go across to become a complete web developer. So this steps is totally based on my experience and journey in the past 2 years. Feel free to switch between technologies. And then we have a last surprise session. So what is web development? As we all know that web development is basically developing websites. Everything we see on the internet browser today are done using three main technologies, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And of course, we have Angular, React, and all other new technologies which have come today to make the websites much more smoother and load faster and provide us a greater performance. So why become a web developer and why now? So, and the reasons which I'm going to give is like personal, and you might find those reasons a really valid one to start the web development. So the first one is it's very interesting and fun. Whatever code changes you make, you just see it in the browser as a user, right? So that's one of the first reason I would feel to start web development. And one of the main other reason is it's very easy to become a web developer considering the other stacks, because one does not need to have a CS degree or a data structure background to become a web developer. And one other reason is like this job or this field actually involves a frequent communication between product owners, designers, and then you'll be the front face for the users, and you have to think from the user's point of view. And since I love people, this field or this job role gives me kind of a good interaction with people across different stakeholders. And one other thing is there is a new technology or a framework which will be emerging every single day. As you can see, we have Angular, React, and then Vue, then we have Svelte right now. So there'll be a lot of constant learning in this field. And the other thing is there is a lot of job market available for this. And as everybody knows, as far as these web browsers and mobile devices are going to be there, the job market for web developers are going to be there. And so definitely this is going to be one of the most sought after job, which is going to be very high in demand. And these are some of the top reasons I would ask you to consider while choosing web development. So before jumping on to the technologies, it would be really great to have some add-ons on some of these things. So one is like just to have a basic knowledge of how internet works, and how a browser works, like when you type a particular URL, how it kind of maps a domain name and then fetch the website, and to have a basic knowledge of different version controls like Git or SVN. So let's see how the journey looks like. So the first step would be HTML and CSS. Of course, these are the two core technologies for developing any websites. So HTML, as everyone knows, it's a markup language. It is the main backbone of any web page. It kind of gives a structure to a website. And the next technology is CSS, which is cascading style sheet. As the name suggests, it provides a styling to the web pages and defines how a web page should look across different devices or different screens, and how a button should look. And this basically gives a look for a web page. And the next one is JavaScript, which is one of the most hated language, but still, which is the coolest language, I would say. So it's basically a client-side scripting language used for making the web page more dynamic. and it is the one which does all the makes all the interactions possible in a web page, like an even click or a call to an API. Everything is done using JavaScript. And one of the coolest thing is JavaScript is the most used language in the market these days. And the next comes the package managers. The package manager is nothing but a collection of software tools that basically automates the process of installing, upgrading, and configuring the software packages which was developed already. So we don't need to develop the code again from the scratch. And some of the popular package managers we have right now is npm and yar, node package managers. So it actually lets people get started on a project easily without needing to get started from the scratch. The next one are the task runners. So the use of task runners are, it's actually a tool to automate a repetitive task such as a CSS minification or combining all the JavaScript, different multiple JavaScript files into a single file, or making a change visible in a browser whenever we make changes in the code. So these kind of changes are done using using Grunt and Gulp, which are the famous task runners. Yeah. Moving on to the next one, which is a framework. So a framework is basically a tool which allows the developers to create an app instantly by providing all the required commonly used modules bundled together. So these frameworks are based on the design patterns like MVC, Model View Controller, and solid concepts used in all the softwares. So the main advantages of using this framework is that it allows us to skip all the tedious process of developing the application from the scratch. That provide us with the basic structure that we needed to create a web application, resulting in saving a lot of time for the web developers. And these frameworks helps us to create a reusable components for our website. So the most popular frameworks which has a very high demand, as many of us would have heard, are Angular, React, and Vue.js. So Angular is a full framework which is based on the pattern of Model View Controller, which will allow to create a web application instantly. Whereas the major difference with React is that it's just a view of a Model View Controller. So this is not a complete framework, but a library to start off with. So they basically helps us to create a view components, and we have to streamline the architecture of the framework. And next is Vue.js, which is basically it combines the pros of both Angular and React. Makes the bundle size really smaller and also easier for the developers to start off the web application. So these are some of the famous frameworks which have come into the market right now, and there are new other frameworks like Svelte which are coming into the market. The next step would be to learn a bit about testing frameworks like Jest or Jasmine. So these frameworks can be used in the front-end development to make unit testing, integration testing, all this kind of API testing can be done using these frameworks like Jest and Jasmine in Angular or React. The next one I would suggest to go on to is to know about what are progressive web apps and accelerated mobile pages. So what are progressive web apps? So they are designed to combine the best features of mobile apps and the mobile web, such as speed and offline usage, without downloading anything. So instead of native application, we can go for PWAs, which supports a lot of mobile features like push notifications, like a mobile app would do. Then we come to accelerated mobile pages, which is actually an open source framework developed by Google in collaboration with Twitter. So they actually help us to create a better, faster experiences, to build lightweight experiences for mobile web by simplifying and minifying the HTML and streamlining the CSS rules. So these are one of the new technologies which are in the web development, which is progressive web apps and accelerated mobile pages. At last, we can also create native web applications using frameworks like Angular or React. So these are incremental steps that I've chosen, like to start the web developer journey. So basically, one can start off with knowing the basics of HTML, CSS, then moving on to a little bit of JavaScript, then package managers, then going for task runners, after which frameworks, testing, PWA, and developing mobile applications. So it doesn't necessarily need someone to finish completely one technology and move on to the other. You can just switch and swap, but then knowing all of these basics before moving on to the next technology will definitely help to get a more fundamental basic knowledge of web development. And the last slide, which is a surprise. So, learning web technologies like JavaScript only doesn't allow us to develop web applications which is interactive, but also it will enable a front-end developer to do all the back-end tasks like connecting to websites and other server-side tasks like file systems, HTTPS requests, or streams using JavaScript, using Node.js. And it actually opens a new avenues for developer. And especially a front-end developer can become a full-stack developer just only by knowing a JavaScript. So this is a very open field where a lot of scopes are there to develop oneself. So that's pretty much I would like to share about the web developer journey. So I hope now you've got an idea of various technologies and a roadmap to consider for starting with web development. And I would love to sync up with you all in either LinkedIn, Twitter, or any session for any further questions or discussions. And this is pretty much the technologies that are there in the web development and which I have come across till my journey here in web development. So thank you for joining me. Be safe and be kind to one another.
This talk certainly benefited from your breadth of knowledge and depth of expertise, Nivetha. Thank you. Next up, we have Dhruti Joshi, Senior Software Engineer at TattvaSoft, talking to us about Angular Components Google Map. Over to you, Dhruti.
Thank you, Varsha. Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are safe and healthy. There were amazing sessions so far today, and I'm feeling very lucky to having this type of enthusiastic audience. The theme of the IWD event is Together We Rise. It means knowledge increases by sharing. So let's start learn something interesting together. Before starting, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Dhruti Joshi, working as a senior software engineer and having an experience of more than half a decade. I'm building my career as a full stack developer and I'm fascinated by maths and logic. I'm managing Women Techmakers chapter from Gandhinagar and also working as a co-organizer of GDG Gandhinagar. Now, without wasting more time, let's move to the topic. We all know about the Google Maps and its very basic requirement from static websites to dynamic websites. Configuration of the Google Maps in websites will almost contain at least 50 lines of codes just for a basic map. And now, if I say that we can use Google Maps in Angular just like a tag, sounds surprising and interesting, right? Actually, yes, it's very easy to use. We can use Google Map just like a text box or other text we are using. So these are the prerequisites that we need to start with the Google Maps. First, we need IDE like Visual Studio Code. Then second, we need Node.js, NPM, and Angular CLI version 9.x. Then we need a good internet connection to configure the Google Maps. And last but not the least, a recent version of browser to run our application. And now, these are the technologies you should be familiar with. That is TypeScript, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Let's go to next. Now let's start a session with a cup of tea. Confused? Actually, tea is very famous in India, isn't it? And around 4 p.m., most of the people would be habituated to have a cup of tea. You guys are wondering why I am talking about tea during the session? Well, it's lightning talk, and so sessions should be like the tea. Just like we feel fresh after drinking tea, you should definitely feel fresh after my session. We'll require 4 ingredients to make a tea, and this session will also cover 4 points. So let's consider each point as an ingredient. So the first ingredient is water, that is setting up the Google Maps. Then the second ingredient is tea, which is loading the Maps JavaScript API. Then the third ingredient is sugar, that is usage of Google Maps. And the last ingredient is milk, which is working with Maps. So I've already prepared a demo project just for your better understanding. What you guys need to do is you just have to type this URL in your browser and you can see the entire demo with the source code on your screen. So that will be easy for you guys to understand. Okay, so the first point is setting up the Google Maps. And for that, we need to install Google Maps module by running the command that you can see here, which is npm install @angular/google-maps. After running this command, you can find Google Maps folder inside the Node modules folder. Then we need to import the Google Maps module in the app.module.ts file. And after that, we need to add Google Maps module in the imports array so that we can use Google Maps throughout the application. Cool, step 1 is completed. Let's go to the source code and see how it has been done. So here is the source code. This is my app.module.ts file. On the line number 7, you can see I have imported the Google Maps module. For that, we have to write the import statement. And after that, we have to write that component in the imports array, just like the line number 10. It's easy, right? Let's move to the next slide. It's very important step. In the same way, tea cannot be made without tea. Google Map cannot be used without API. We need to provide Maps JavaScript API key in our index.html. Now question comes in your mind, that's how we get that API key. Don't worry. Here is the link of the official Google document and that will guide you how to get the API key. And it's very simple. So after getting the API key, we need to provide that key in the script tag inside the head tag of the HTML page. Great. We have completed the point number 2 as well. Now let's move to the source code and check. So this is my index.html page. You can see the script tag here, which is under the head tag. And this is my Maps JavaScript API key. Isn't it easy? I think yes, right? So let's go ahead. Now the third point is usage of Google Maps. For this, we'll create new component by running the command ng space g space c and then space name of the component. Here G stands for generate and C stands for component. This command will create 3 files. One is HTML file, second is CSS file, and third file is TypeScript file. Now we'll add Google Map component just like a tag in our HTML file. That's it. Now if you run the application, you can see default map with default functionality. Now let's go to the source code. So this is my HTML file. Okay, here you can see I have used the Google Map component just like a tag we are using like text box, p tag, div tag, etc. etc. Right? And this is the output. Okay, so if someone like black tea, then it's ready to drink. But tea without milk is not that much delicious. Am I right? So let's go ahead. It's all about we can do more with Google Maps, and which is actually the basic requirements for all of us. Like we want our own buttons to control zoom in and zoom out. Then we want to have a marker for the current location. Then maybe we want a map info window, and maybe we want to add multiple markers dynamically as well, right? So let's go ahead. First, let's add some user-defined our own custom buttons to control the zoom in zoom out functionality. Okay. So for this, I have added 2 buttons and have created two functions. Okay. Let's go to the source code. See, here is the 2 buttons. You can see here. Okay. And here are the click events. This is called method binding. Okay. And here is the source code behind this HTML file. Okay. Let's go to the event. Here is the event. Okay. Now maybe you wonder what is this these.zoom and these.options.maxzoom. Okay. So these.zoom is the local property of the app component. And these are this is the property of this options object. Okay. Let's go to the top, and I've explained this in detail. By default, I have set zoom property to 12. Okay, and then I have initialized one options, and I've set max zoom and mean zoom over here. Okay, so if I click on the button, then where we can zoom and zoom out. Okay, let's go to the output. So I can zoom out and zoom in from our custom buttons. Sounds interesting, right? Now let's move to the next slide. Now let's add marker. Now we want to add a marker for our current location. Like I am presenting somewhere from Ahmedabad. So when I run the Google Map, there would be a marker somewhere in Ahmedabad. So what we do for that? We will use navigator.geolocation.getCurrentPosition method. This will give the latitude and longitude of the current location. Now again, let's go to the source code. So here is the method navigator.geolocation.getCurrentPosition. Okay. So this will give me the current location's latitude and longitude, and we have assigned this value to the latitude and longitude. Then we have set the label object, we have set the color of the label, and we have set the text of the label. Then we have set the title property, And then we have set the info property. And next is options. In options, we can give the animation to the marker. We have two options over here. One is bounce and one is drop. Okay. Now let's go to the HTML page. Okay. I have given this properties to this Google Map component. Okay. This is called property binding. Okay. We have to add a map marker tag to plot the marker for the current location. Okay. We have set all the properties like label, title, options, and position. This position will be used for plotting the current location. Okay. Now let's go to the output. You can see the marker here and it is the current location. Okay. Now let's go ahead. Now next is how to add the map info window. Now what is the map info window? Maybe you all know, when I click on the marker, it will open up the window that is called the map info window, right? So let's go to the source code, and here I have added the map info window tag, just like other tags. Okay. Then I have created click event for the map marker because that info window should be open when I click on the marker. So I have created the click event of the map marker. Okay. So this is called method binding. Okay. And the way we have bind the content over here, it's called string interpolation, right? So this is the method which will be called when we click on the marker. Okay, so let's go to the code. Okay, so this is the event map info window. Okay, we have the reference element here and the content which we want to display in the map info window. We have set this and we will open this when we click on the map marker window. Isn't it good? Right? So next, let's go ahead. Now, this is the basic requirement. We want to add multiple markers dynamically. Okay, and for that we have to iterate through the objects that we have. Okay, and for this we have used the for loop, and here it is called ng-for. Okay, now let's move to the source code. This is the event which I call when I click on the add marker button. Okay, when I click on this button, I will push all the details to the array. So this is the default behavior of the array. Okay, now I am calculating the random location by getting the latitude and longitude randomly by using the math.random. Okay, then I am setting the label property over here, title property over here, and info property over here. Here I have set the animation as a drop. Okay, now let's go to the HTML page and check how we bind this. So this is the map marker, and inside this we have returned the for loop. It will be iterated number of times that the marker has a number of elements, right? And inside that we have assigned the properties. Cool. Now let's go to the output and check. You can see when I click on the add marker button, markers will be plotted on the Google map, and we can zoom in, zoom out as well. Isn't it easy, right? So this is the final output of the source code that I have shared with you. Awesome. You guys have made your own tea. After this session, I am sure you guys can configure Google Maps in your Angular project by yourself very easily. So what we have covered today, the first how we get the Google Maps module in our project, then how we configure it with the project, then how to get the Maps JavaScript API key and provide that in our index.html page. And then we will use Google Maps component as a tag in our HTML file of the component. And then we can add more feature as per our requirement. So covering all the properties for the Google Maps would be lot for the lightning session. So if you want to go in detail, I'll refer you to go to the Google Maps API documents for the more detail and the complete list. And also there is also the source code available for the Angular implementation as well. I hope you guys find this session useful. Thank you so much to the Women Techmakers community to give me the opportunity to spread some knowledge. Thank you so much to the amazing audience for joining me. Stay home, stay safe, and take care of yourself and family. Goodbye.
Thank you, Dhuti, for this engaging and educative talk. This was certainly beneficial to our audience. Last but not the least, we have Akanshi Srivastava, Product Manager at Gojek, to share her knowledge about micro interactions in Android. Over to you, Akanshi.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone. I hope you're all having a great time at the sessions today. I'm Akanshi Srivastava. I'm currently working as a product engineer in Gojek. Today I'm going to be talking about micro interactions in Android apps. So as a developer, as a designer, or as a product manager, it's our responsibility to ensure that our customers, our users are able to interact and are comfortable with our applications. And that is why micro interactions are so important. So without much further ado, let's move. So when designing a product, what are the main things that you take care of? A good UI and maybe a well-written, well-thought-of content and a good architecture to lay it around. But what is more important is the little details to focus on. These little details of the designs are called micro interactions. So what are micro interactions exactly then? So imagine a use case or some scenario or a process that you want to complete in an application. So that use case of yours will require some interaction between the user and the designer, which has designed the designs of the app. So this interaction is very important, and this interaction is actually known as the micro interaction. And it is, as a developer, as a designer, our responsibility to make it very smooth and very comfortable for the users. So here I've shared a couple of examples of micro interactions. I've used the basic Google Calendar app, and I'm pretty sure you must have come across all these animations, all these interactions before. So you can notice when you click on the button to add an event, these other menu options pop up, and these come very beautifully, very smoothly, and very pleasantly. They don't interfere with your existing designs or the process. Similarly, when you're switching between days or months in the calendar, it's done with a very smooth animation. It doesn't feel like something is interrupting or something is very sudden. So these interactions are very important in an application. So I'll just discuss about the main principles of micro interactions now. So we have three main interactions: continuity, predictability, and transformability. Talking about continuity, why is continuity important in an application? Imagine you have an app which goes from the main product page to the checkout page. Now, when you're in between the checkouts, you suddenly realize there's a very bright, flashy, tacky banner which is showing you some random offers of some other products. So, as a user, you might get distracted. You might click on that, and you are actually completely broken off from the flow that you were in, right? So this is why continuity is very important. Your micro interaction should not be distracting. It should be very subtle. It should come very naturally in the app, in the project. So as a user, as a developer, you would want that the user actually lands on the checkout page and is actually checking out with the product that they've selected in the tab, right? So this is why continuity is very important. Talking about continuity a little more with another example, imagine you have a list of items in the recycler view. Okay, just a list of items. So what happens if each item gets added with a very tacky animation? So it might look good for the designer in the beginning. They might have added some animations for say 10 items. So whenever I'm scrolling, I'm just going till 10 items and each item in the list is coming with some animation. But what if in real time that list has over 100 products? So when you're scrolling through the list, you'll see that each item coming in with an animation that is so long will be very annoying for the user, right? So that is why it's very important that they should be very subtle. It should not look like, okay, a lot of time is getting wasted there, or the user, as a user, you're getting distracted because of that long animation. And secondly, equally important is predictability. So anything in our app should look familiar to the user, even if the user is coming to your app for the first time. So when there's a button, it should perform as a button. When I'm clicking on an item in the list, it should perform as an item in the list. It should not happen that my items in the list, when clicked, are taking me back to my main page or are killing my app. That is not a very desirable micro interaction, right? Also, when you're swiping through a product, you would want the swipe animation to have. Instead, if imagine that swipe starts showing you a scaling animation, that is not very desirable. Also, whenever you're there in an application, you know where to land from where. When you're going from screen 1 to screen 2, you are usually familiar that pressing the back button or actually clicking on the back arrow will take you back to the previous page. So it should not happen that these micro interactions are breaking the flow that is there in the application. So now talking about the third, the transformability. Usually you must have noticed, I'll start this one with an example. You must have noticed when you're clicking on an item in a recycler view, in a list view, you're clicking on an item and that item expands, or maybe that item takes you to another page with the details of the item, right? So in that case, you must have noticed that there's a very swift animation that is occurring. It doesn't look like, okay, you're abruptly landing on a very random page and it is coming to you as a surprise. So that should not happen. That is why transformability is very important. Even if, like we checked in the previous example, when the person was clicking on the events button, it just switched when the person was clicking on the plus button, it was swiftly changing back to events button, and the events button again being clicked on opened the events page. So there was a very swift transformation between the icons, the vectors which were used in the button. And this is what transformability is about. So now I'll discuss the main parts of micro interactions in an Android application. These parts are really important, especially when you're implementing micro interaction in an Android app. So the first one is a trigger. So what a trigger does is that imagine you have, like, we'll just take the example of the Google Calendar again. What I want to do here is I want to add an event in my Google Calendar. Now there are multiple ways I can approach that. I can either click on the events button to add the event, or I can just click on the calendar, double click on the calendar, and it will open the events page for me, right? I will be able to add my event. So this is called a trigger. So a trigger is basically the action which is prompting the use case that you want to hit. And this is very important for a micro interaction. It should not happen that for each trigger, your micro interaction is different. Notice whenever you're clicking on the events page, it is scrolling up in the same way, either way, even if you're clicking on the button or you're clicking on the calendar. Secondly, talking about rules. So what are rules exactly? Rules are basically a set of well-defined micro interactions for your use case. So whenever I'm trying to add this events, or whenever, no matter which trigger I'm using to get to my events adding page, it will always add this similar kind of event to my screen. It won't happen that if I'm using the plus button, it's adding a different kind of event, or if I'm clicking on the calendar, it's adding a different kind of event. So these are rules. These are some well-defined scenarios which will always be similar for no matter how different your trigger is. Thirdly comes the feedback. This is also very important to let the users know that they are actually actively interacting right now with your application. So what happens when you click on an input field, or you just click on a button when you're trying to add your name and then submitting it somewhere. You see, whenever you're trying to add your name, you will see that the line is underlined, and if it's incorrect, it will be underlined in red, right? And when you're trying to click on a button, there'll be a small ripple, or it will become disabled if it's incorrect or something. So these things are called feedbacks, which we get from an application. So whenever I'm trying to perform an action, I get a feedback from the app. And it is actually well defined if the designers are keeping all the scenarios in mind, which is very important. And the last thing is loops. So loops are when you're trying to perform the same case in different ways, as like using different triggers, and maybe you've set up one setting in the first scenario. You would not want to change, reassign the settings again and again. You would want your settings are perfectly set in the first time, no matter if you're coming again from the second event. So I'll just explain it better with an example. Look at the clock when I'm setting the time. It's set to from 1, I'm changing it to 3 p.m. So when I say, okay, it's an all day event, my clock is actually not important. It just becomes disabled. But when I'm again disabling the all day event, the clock is again set to 3 p.m. It's not set to 1 p.m. again, which was the default time. So that is actually restoring my actions, and it's not making me work again and again. And even if on a loop I keep doing this, it will always restore the mode or the state in which I was. So this is what loops is in micro interactions. Now I'll just talk a little about the implementation when you're trying to add these micro interactions in Android. There are multiple ways in which you can do this, and personally, I have found that you can use the animators which Android provides, or you can take help from a third-party application, third-party library. Here, if you see, I've recorded a screen where you scroll and you will notice that the label on the top left corner, which says the month, actually shifts according to the month you're scrolling to. So if you notice now, when I'm scrolling, it changes from August to September to October with a very swift transition animation, right? So here I've used an object animator. So what it does is that an object animator can be applied to just one object, and it makes sure your animation, like I've applied a very smooth translation animation. It's not very sudden. The names are not changing very suddenly. They're changing with a smooth translation now. Similarly, instead of an object animator, you can use a value animator. The main difference is that the value animator can be applied to multiple views, multiple elements on the screen. So here I've just used it for the add button, because right now only the add button is scaling. But for instance, if we would have wanted the calendar mark on the top in the toolbar to scale as well, we could have added the same animation here in this same value animator. And the third thing is the view property animator. So view property animator is no different from object animator. As you can see, I've just used a dot to indent all my properties instead of writing them in separate lines of code. This can be done this makes your process to add animations to small elements very easy. And moving on, you can also use XML to add animation. It's not important to just write a code in a Kotlin file. You can add through XMLs. You can take help from, again, third-party libraries. Here in the XML, I've added my animator set. So animator set is basically a set of multiple animators. So you see, I've added one object animator for the alpha animation, which is changing the visibility and invisibility, the opacity basically. And the second one is for the translation. So this can be very easily applied to any object in the code with a couple of lines. That is it. That is all you have to do. And if you're planning on using some third-party libraries, it's very easy. The documentation is very easy. They actually allow you to use or to add animated vector joyables in your apps or any SVG that the designer is giving to you. You don't have to convert or write an XML code for that. You can just use the SVG directly to in your application for the animations. Now coming to a very important part here. So when I talk about micro interactions, often it's taken in a way that, micro interactions are so important that we should maybe apply it to all the elements in the screen, which is not necessary. It should not be done. So what happens when you overdo animations is that you make it very confusing for the users, especially for the first time users. And people usually get annoyed very easily, and they start, they stop using your application. So here, if you see in the first example, just to show the personal details, I'm using the alpha animation on each line. So what happens when the second line is there? It's very difficult for me to predict whether there's going to be a third line or not. And the user might just keep waiting and there might not be a third line at all. Or maybe after 3 lines, I might be waiting for more info to come. And that's just a waste of time. And we don't want that, right? So that is why it's very important that we make sure that these animations are like really swift, really smooth, and are not applied to each element. It's only applied where it's necessary. Also, like you can see in the second animation, just to dismiss the details, I've applied a translation animation to each line. Again, it's taking one line at a time and dismissing it. It's going to take a very long time, right? And usually when a person is there on your application, it's said that in a few seconds the person get bored very easily. The cognitive load is too much, they get stressed out, annoyed, and they just stop using your app, and we don't want that. So that's why it's very important that we don't overcrowd our app with unnecessary elements and micro interactions. And these micro interactions should be almost invisible. So imagine when we were clicking on the plus button to add events in the calendar page, the way it was changing from a plus to an events button was very smooth, very swift, and very quick. It did not take a lot of time, but it was still noticeable. So it was almost invisible. And thirdly, it should be very consistent. It should not be like, this plus button on a different screen is behaving differently or has a different micro interaction on that screen. We would want that this animation or the interaction that we have set to a particular component is same across all the screens. And that is why it's very important that it's designed for repeated use. It should not be like that, you're just going to first screen, applying a particular interaction to one component, and then maybe if you have that component on another screen, you're again working on the entire micro interaction again, which is like that is definitely not required. And lastly, you don't have to force it. Please make sure that your micro interactions are really subtle, really natural, and they're going and blending in with your application very well. And whenever the user is using it, they feel more comfortable. They're actually able to understand the app. Even if they're coming for the first time, they are able to, understand all the aspects and the purpose that your app is serving. And you're highlighting and adding micro interactions to the points only where it's required. So I think if you're following these principles, these parts, you'll be able to design a very well-functioning app with the proper working micro interactions. And with that, I would just want to say that the more your users get to interact with your application, the more they get familiar, the more is the time that they spend on the app, and the more is the better outcome, right? So I would just like to conclude with the quote by Benjamin Franklin. So he said that if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I may remember. And if you involve me, I will understand. So that is all we have to follow when you're applying micro interactions. Just don't tell what the users can do. Make sure they're getting involved and they're able to experience it. That's all from my side. I hope you enjoy the session. If there are any questions, please feel free to drop them in the question box. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akanshi. We now invite the speakers on the screen for the Ask Me Anything sessions. We have curated a few questions based on the live chats, and the speaker will address a few of them for us. Over to you, Akanshi, for take us through the AMA session. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Akanshi and I'll be moderating the session today. I hope everyone enjoyed the session, and we have a few questions which the people watching have asked our speakers. So let's move on. So the first question is for Mayuri. So what are the tips you would like to share for folks getting started with Android? Over to you, Mayuri.
Thanks for the question. Glad to know that you want to start on Android and welcome to the community. You can start with developer.android.com. There are tons of resources on that website to get started. Depending on your choice, if you like videos, there are lots of videos available on Android Developers YouTube channel or Udacity courses. If you like to read, there are lots of articles and blog posts available on the official Medium channels. Apart from that, the Android community is huge and it has tons of resources on every other concept that is out there. I would suggest try doing a lot of projects using code labs and open source it to get collaborations from other developers as well. Happy coding.
Thank you so much, Mayuri. And moving on, I have the next question for Pooja. Usually, while creating a page, it is not possible to create the page for each and every device specifically. So, will there be any grouping according to the size of the devices or something like that?
Hi, Akanshi, thank you for the question, and thank you to PB Varam for the very interesting question, because this is pretty important when you are creating an application. The idea of knowing when to create reusable widgets and when not to. So here, definitely the emphasis is on reusability, and you should not be creating widgets according to the pages according to the size of devices. As I spoke on in my talk, you should create widgets which are responsive in terms of the device height and width, and whenever, if the device is changing, it's like if you're going from device to platform to web platform, it will automatically readjust the widget by itself. Definitely there are times when the design is slightly different for web platform and slightly different for a phone platform, but it won't be a complete huge redesign for web platform at all. Then that is not responsive app coming to web, that's just a different website and a different phone device. So if you are creating a phone device that acts responsive for web, you need to just readjust some of your elements in a way, using the layout builder, using the constraints format, where you can just see that, okay, if constraints is less than or more than xyz width, then just add a little bit of interaction, or add a little bit of behavior to it. Otherwise, don't. So the same widget, if it knows its constraints, can act differently for different widget, for different platforms. So definitely create separate widgets for each of your section, and give each of them a responsiveness to it, using the widgets that can, stretch and fold according to the size. So that's what I would suggest to create better responsive apps.
Totally makes sense. Thank you so much, Pooja, for the answer. So my next question is for Nishu. Is there any way we can use Angular for mobile apps just like we have React Native?
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks for the question, Aditi. So now it depends. So if you're planning to build a native application with Angular, you can go for native script, which is like widely used for Angular applications, and you can also go for Ionic. I'll share the links in the in the live chat section so that you can learn native script or Ionic. However, if you feel that there's a learning curve in native script or Ionic, and it's not just Angular that you have to use there, in that case you can also go for progressive web apps. Now that's really helpful for you to just build the regular web application but use it as a mobile app as well. The concept of headless browser comes there. And the main part there is that you have to build your web application being very careful about the responsiveness there. So that's all about when you're dealing with progressive web apps. It will also include service workers, offline rendering of your application. So that's pretty interesting. However, to your question, native script or Ionic is the are the things that you can use for your mobile development with Angular. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nishu. And my next question is for Nivita. What will be the best approach to learn JavaScript from basic and master it and then learn framework? Or learn some important concept of JavaScript and jump quickly to learn framework?
So thanks, Sahil, for asking this question. And this is the same question, to be frank, which I had when I started, learning frameworks. So I would suggest that from my experience, like knowing the basics of JavaScript features like ES6 and everything will be suffice to start on working with the framework. But in order to become an intermediate or an expert level, knowing the JavaScript in depth will always help us to debug better and get the working of the framework, because the both React, Angular, every other framework is basically on JavaScript, written on JavaScript. So becoming an expert on JavaScript is definitely a good choice to do. And to answer your question, definitely the basics of JavaScript would be suffice to start working on a framework, but just keep learning every day.
Great. Thank you so much, Nivita. And my next question is for Shruti. Can you please explain latitude line at line number 61 in app.components.ts? All right, we have an image question.
Thank you, Akanshi, and thank you for the question. I would definitely like to answer this question. So, first of all, it would be not the case in the real projects. As I don't have any database, and I have to set up some data for multiple markers, and I have to and I have some latitude and longitudes. Okay, so when I click on the button, markers will be plotted from that data. So there are two ways we can have data for latitude and longitude. First is we can have two-dimensional array, and then we can store latitude and longitude for the places in that. And second is this that I have implemented. I have calculated latitude and longitude using the math.random. Okay, then if we go to the line number 61, first I have used these dot center dot let. Okay, so what is the center? Center is the object of the type google.maps.let long literal. It contains the latitude and longitude of the current location. Okay, so if we talk about latitude, then these dot center dot let contains the latitude of the current location, and after that that is the formula that gives us some random value, and that will be added to the these dot center dot let, and for entire equation we'll get some random latitude, and similarly for longitude, so that we can have multiple latitudes and longitudes, and using this way we can plot multiple markers on the map. I hope this makes sense. Thank you, Akanshi. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so another question is, when should one start thinking about micro interactions when designing the app or while developing? This is a very interesting question. I think it's very important that when the app is still in the designing phase, we come up with micro interactions. That is mainly because when you're designing, you'll be able to figure out how each component should look on each screen. And it will be very easy for the developer to plan ahead and then develop. Because when I from a personal experience, I was working on a project where the components and the design was already made, and when I had to add the micro interactions later on, I had to change a lot of things from the code. So it's actually easier for the developer also to plan ahead and move forward with micro interactions. And other than that, if the designer doesn't like how the micro interaction are actually turning up in the application, they can always have a feedback session, multiple feedback sessions in fact, and then the micro interaction can be reworked on. But I think just to sum up, it's better that we plan ahead in the design phase. Thank you. All right, I think that's enough. That's all the questions we have for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you so much for all the lovely questions. Thanks.
Thank you to all the speakers for joining us today. I would again like to remind you about the feedback form that you can fill at gwo.ple/IWD feedback by June 5th, and we will send you the participation certificates by June 10th. Now, I would like to invite Lakshya, Program Manager at Women Techmakers India, to talk about IWD India 2020. Over to you, Lakshya.
Thank you so much, Varsha. It is a real pleasure for me to come and conclude this entire event series that some amazing organizers have put together for you. I typically do not use notes, but I have written a few notes today just to ensure I don't miss in sharing any of the moments that we shared through this entire journey of 3 weeks. With that, I think, yes, first of all, a very good afternoon to all of you. We have received great love from you all around the world to ensure that IWD India Summit 2020 is a grand success. This platform was created to ensure that there are safe spaces for women and allies to come together to learn and share together as one community. So yes, I wanted to share with you the journey of how did IWD India 2020 come to life. Every year in March, communities come together. Typically, they host International Women's Day event for their local communities. And given that all of us are amidst this global pandemic, a lot of events had to be cancelled this year. Over time, we saw more people settling into this new way of online medium. And just over a casual chat with a few Women Techmakers ambassadors, we were brainstorming about how we should do the International Women's Day event series this year. The idea started from doing chapter-wise to like regional events to like a country-wide event. And ultimately, we agreed saying, why can't we just go global? So everybody like got into this, everybody contributed to this, and it took 35 communities, 3 weeks of participation, about 40-45 community leaders coming together to just ensure that we have this amazing event put together. It was like 4 days, 2 weekends of lot of excitement, and we wanted to lift women up through this platform and encourage them to join, thrive, and lead in technology. And hence, the theme of this event, Together We Rise. Here are a few statistics for you to see, and the reason it's here is only to signify all the love that we have got from all of you throughout, like right from registrations to viewers actually viewing live. And we had a few viewers because of time zone who probably had to come back and watch the video on demand. But we appreciate each one of you for joining us through these 4 days of the event. Moving on, I think we had a very diverse set of audiences, be it in terms of experience levels, be it in terms of cultural backgrounds, locations, gender, and even more. So thank you to all of you. And we also managed to collate some love from our attendees. So here's a few of the stories that we managed to curate for you. And I'm like really glad to share with you that the website team will continue to work over the next week to ensure that we have a few of these engaging tweets and blogs that many of you have written on our website, so that more people can learn about your own experiences that you've shared with us. I also would like to thank all our community partners who've been great outreach partners to ensure that this event reaches beyond just Women Techmakers, beyond just India. So thank you to all the partners who've made this possible. Yes, we've all witnessed a magic that is created when a lot of these leaders come together. They are community leaders, they're industry experts, they're Google developer experts who came together to share and speak about either their own personal stories or about the topics that they are the most passionate about. And it wasn't easy because this was so different from the typical offline setting where you go on stage and you present and you deliver a fabulous presentation. There was a lot of learning they had to go through, innumerous amounts of dry run to actually get this perfect view on screen for all of you. So thank you to all the speakers for not only their time but also their patience in ensuring that we had a seamless execution. Moving on to like the unsung heroes behind this entire event, the organizers. Let's begin. I want to begin with the website team. So each day would start about 10 p.m. and we have gone through insane number of revisions, pulls and pushes on GitHub, and it took about 200 plus commits, 50 plus hours to develop that website for all of you. And thanks to Varsha and Priyal, who managed the look and feel, the back end of this website. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Purnima and Sumitra, who actually took time to update a few of those speaker profiles and organizer profiles. Given that we had 40 plus speakers, an even bigger organizing team, I'm sure this was not an easy task. So thank you. Supriya and Usha were always around to help with content, to help with giving comments on the UI, the look and feel, etc. So thank you to you too. Raj is another unsung hero here who has played a great role in mentoring the team to ensure that there's a minimal load time when you actually hit that goo.gle link on your browser, and you have a seamless experience as well through the website. So thank you to each one of you here in the website team. Moving on to our design team, our creative geniuses. So the attendee badges, the speaker cards, the posters that came out on social media, the lovely promotional videos that you got to see, the certificates that you will soon be receiving from us if you fill the feedback form. These are all masterpieces that have been created by some of these creative geniuses. So a big thank you to all of you. This one's my favorite part. So coordinating such a big event for over 3 hours, over 4 days and with a minimum of about 8 to 10 speakers each day is not an easy task. And, I'm not even counting the seamless transition from one session to the another that happened. And this was only possible through some meticulous planning and collaboration between all these amazing people. So behind these seamless sessions, there were a lot of dry runs, lot of test checks, lot of syncing between each of these members. So thank you to all of you for your time, for your patience. And I know that despite the power cuts, despite bad weather, despite flaky internet, you've ensured that, this entire event was so seamless and the show went on. So I cannot thank you enough for your time, for your patience, for your amazing planning and execution. Thank you. Engaging with you on social media was this very team. So be it spreading more information about the event through social media, engaging with people who engage with us through the WTM India handle. It even meant a few of them changing their WhatsApp statuses to promote this event. And creating those lovely appreciation videos were all ideas from this very team. Thank you, team, for all your hard work. And congratulations for reaching 1,000 plus followers and subscribers over social media in just 20 days. So thank you for all your effort. Moving on, session moderators. So these were the heroes who actually moderated the sessions on YouTube, curated questions for you, ensured that all the chat questions were answered, were catered to. And I saw a lot of engagement. on YouTube chat. So thank you to the audience, but thank you also to the session moderators who ensured that all of this was so seamless. The speaker buddies. So these were the awesome buddies that our speakers had, whom the speakers could reach out to in case they wanted help with technology, just general advice on the event, keeping time checks, and sending them constant reminders. So thank you to all the speaker buddies as well, who for all your hard work in contributing to this event's success. Last but not the least, thank you to these track owners who ensured that the event, like everything about each of these tracks were perfect, each of the 4 tracks. They were perfect hosts. They ensured everything was, spot on. So thank you to each one of you to finish this event in style. Thank you. Like we collated some love from you on Twitter, I also secretly managed to reach out to a few of them. They don't know this is happening yet. To just pen down a few memories for them from IWD India 2020. I'll give you about a few seconds to actually read a few of these testimonials, but I wanted to call out there are a lot more organizers who have come together to actually, from the ideation to the planning to the execution, who've ensured that this event is so seamless. And I see that through all the love that we're getting from chats, about the various sessions. So thank you to each one of you from the organizing team to create this fabulous masterpiece. I've also received a lot of questions on chats on how do you become a community member. And here is my 2 cents on this. You can sign up to become a Women Tech Makers member by clicking on that WTM membership link, which will give you access to curated content depending on your skill set, depending on your experience, etc. If you want to know about local chapters that are near you, what you can do is you can go to the second link, the ambassadors link, find an ambassador near you. So there are 35 plus chapters in the country. So find a chapter near you and reach out to an organizer, and they will let you know about the events that are happening in their local communities. Last but not the least, I want to also thank a lot of allies. Though this event was about celebrating women and allies, I cannot underscore the help and support we have received from a lot of allies to ensure such a smooth execution of this event. So while I give a huge shout out to all our allies, it's my pleasure to call on screen one such ally, Brijraj Singh. He is the GDG organizer for Jalandhar and Google developer expert for web technologies. So let's have him on screen, please. Hi, Rich. Thank you for joining us. I know it took what effort it took for me to actually get him to share the screen with you. So first of all, thank you so much. Rich, you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Laksha, for having me.
So Rich, if you can tell us about how did you get started with communities?
Yeah, I would like to share my journey. I started as an attendee of GDG DevFest 2014 event. I was the time when I got introduced to the community. Post event, I started attending the meetups and volunteering for the same. I became the co-organizer in July 2016 and the community organizer in Feb 2017, which gave me more responsibility, exposure, opportunity to work for the community and help the society. In those years, I found that I'm more interested in web technologies. Then I started contributing in open source project, which helped me to shape my career as a Google developer expert for web technologies in June 2019. And yeah, here I am helping other communities by developing web app templates and tools for events and communities, which is now being used by 120 plus community all across the world. You may have a look at Aura Repo at the GitHub profile of GDGX.
Great, amazing, Rich. Like you've done so many things. Thank you for all your contributions. So, for all our allies out there, if you could throw some light on how can one, as an ally, contribute to a program like Women Tech Makers, which is to promote gender equity in technology.
Yeah, ally is not a word; it is an action, which we earn as a title by supporting women. What I think is that girls are being discouraged at young age from pursuing career in STEM. I have also noticed that women face gender discrimination at their working place. So we should be the one supporting our colleague to make them feel strong and confident. Talking about the program like Women Tech Makers, we can be a strong ally by supporting our community leads in terms of organizing events, sharing workloads, taking care about their safety, making them feel comfortable, and promoting the event, which are mainly focused for the women for to gap and thrive their career in tech. Also, we can play the role of mentor by guiding them, sharing with them various opportunities that exist in the ecosystem, and helping them to speak up for themselves. Thank you, Laksha.
Thank you so much, Rich. First of all, a huge thank you for agreeing to do this. This was one of like I've reached out to so many speakers for this event. Convincing Rich was one of the toughest for me. So thank you so much, and thank you to all the organizing team, the allies who've just ensured to bring IWD India 2020 to life. Thank you so much, and over to you, Varsha and Priyal.
Thank you, Laksh, for briefing the story of IWD India 2020. It helps us to live the memories of the past 3 weeks in a few months.
Thank you, Rich, for joining us and sharing how one can be a strong ally. Not to forget our other allies, Devesh, Thrumil, and Sneh, who have been contributing and helping us throughout this IWD India 2020. Thank you so much for being with us. And cheers! What a day it has been. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our speakers of IWD India 2020 for making this event a huge success. It would have not been possible to flow with these without your time and contribution in this celebration. I would also love to extend my love for the amazing audiences we had in these 4 days. Thank you, and your outstanding patience could not have been asked for a better time than when we needed each and every participant on board for long hours. We are nothing short of incredible.
Amazing. It's conference audiences like you that makes conferences awesome. Thank you very much for your unwavering attention throughout this celebration. The summit would not be possible without the marvelous team behind the IWD India 2020. The support and enthusiasm that you people had in each day of planning is prodigious.
I totally agree with you, Priyal. Also, I would like to share a token of thank you note to Lakshya for uniting these 35 communities together. Uh, Lakshya, WTM ambassadors have united and curated a small video for you. So let's have a look at this video, please. Sneh, I think there is Sneh. Sorry, I think there is no audio. So I'm sharing. I'll be sharing. Sorry for the issues.
It's okay, Rosh.
Yeah. So let's have a look at this video. Just a minute.
IWD celebration, Lakshya has depicted how a true leader should lead. Her energy and enthusiasm to excel are really contagious. I love the way she shines spotlight on others and want to emulate it. Take a go, Captain.
You inspire us to do things which we actually meant to do. So, thanks again for making us grow, for inspiring us. Thank you so much.
You are truly an inspiration. The way you handle the things, the way you take care of everyone is remarkable, Lakshya. You have been the strongest throughout this journey. Working closely with you for the website or anything related to IWD India 2020 will be memorable for me for sure.
With all our hard work and team efforts, we pulled it off so amazingly. This could all be possible due to your constant support. So, thank you so much for helping us in each and every bit.
Doing this video brings me so much joy. So quickly, I just wanted to share three things that me and I'm very sure other WPM ambassadors feel the same way. So the first thing is you are an amazing mentor for all of us. The second one is you are such an inspiration. The way the IWD event was so brought well together, and we all did a fantastic job, and the person behind that was you.
Thank you so much, Lakshya, for pushing us to do more. You're so inspiring. Keep motivating us.
Thank you, Laksh, for believing me and supported me all the time. I learned a lot of things under your guidance.
Hello, Lakshya. Thank you for your love and support to pull out this event so smoothly, for extending help and bringing us everyone together. You have been always there with us.
Hi Lakshya, thanks for providing support and trusting us throughout the journey. You have very charismatic personality and hence you are role model for all of us. Your journey from chapter lead to WTM India lead always inspires us.
You are a superwoman, Lakshya. You always inspire us and encourage us to do our best job.
Lakshya is like a mentor for us, at the same time best friend for us. Like we can share anything with Lakshya.
Hi Lakshya, it was a great pleasure to work along with you in this IWD, and not just for the IWD, whenever you work with her, she pushes us to do the best and to challenge ourselves.
Hi Lakshya, thank you. Thank you for being a great leader, for being an incredible mentor, and for inspiring us.
Your encouragement and guidance led me to the place where I am now. Thank you, Lakshya, for being such a great role model.
You are a wonderful leader and a friend. I mean, you are everything one could look for in a good mentor.
She's the Wonder Woman behind WTM Ambassadors India and the success of IWD Summit 2020.
Hi Lakshya, I just have to say hundreds and thousands of thank you to you for each and everything.
The first word that comes to my mind whenever I talk about Lakshya is definitely the word shield, because she has been a shield to so many of us women tech makers ambassadors, raising a community which is not just a place for technical growth but has atmosphere of compassion and sisterhood definitely requires a lot of hard work and efforts. And for that, kudos to you, Lakshya. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this community and for the awesome work that you do. Thank you.
And yeah, let's pat on the back. Thank you.
Do you people want Lakshya on screen? As I can see, like public is demanding Lakshya to be on screen, so I'm just adding you, Lakshya. If you are saying anything, you are on mute.
My God, this was like the biggest surprise. I wanted to surprise all of you with that thank you note, but this is like I'm just out of words. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to like work with some amazing people like you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lakshya, for being throughout this summit. And I'm so sorry, people, for this internet glitch. Yeah, it happens, and it happened at the end. So it's okay. Moving forward, believe it or not, I'm out of words to describe how fantastic this conference was and how memorable the experience of putting it together was. Thank you so much for being the excellent speakers, the energetic audiences, and the remarkable team together. Yes, together we rise. See you. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.